It is 2:00 and this meeting will come to order. I apologize for my voice. Someone gave me a little gift last week and my voice is not recovered yet. I'm sure I'm beyond the contagion stage. I'll try not to breathe on anyone. All right, so first is our roll call. It looks like all of our trustees are here. Our treasurer is not here yet, and our attorney is here. We will now have the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, we will now have public comments. Audience signs, noise, and behavior must not interfere with the board's work or another's experience of the meeting. If you feel you must support a public commenter, it would help the decorum and business of the board if you would do a sign language applause, which is like this. Speakers state name and community and speak for no more than 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board are expected to observe a level of civility and decorum appropriate for a public meeting. No personal attacks or disruptions from audience members will be tolerated. The first person that we have up is Emily Christopherson.
Emily Christopherson, Post Falls. I didn't prepare much because Christmas is coming up, but I did want to revisit something Mr. Boyles said. I had my doubts when you chose Mr. Boyles as your legal counsel. However, when I heard his stance on government overreach and discrimination, I felt he might be the right man for the job. I hope he has a lot to say about your draft material selection policy, as it seems to conflict with his interpretation of the First Amendment. Let me remind the board of his words. Mr. Boyles said, and I quote, "I'm very proud of the work that I've done, and I'm very proud of defending speech that some people find offensive, because that is the essence of the First Amendment protection. And as you all might know, the Missouri case is showing just how dangerous it is when government entities get involved in policing speech and engaging in viewpoint discrimination. So I don't look at the First Amendment issue from a political perspective. I look at the First Amendment issue as an everyone perspective, as a common denominator. If I can't say something that offends you and you can't say something that offends me, and it's the government that's causing that restriction, that causes a problem. So we all win when the truth gets out and we get to defend that. So I will defend pretty much anybody with any viewpoint if the government is restricting usage." And that's what he said at the meeting from the Chamber of Commerce. Just another quick thought. I visit the Hayden and Post Falls Library, so that's all I can speak to. But I've noticed over the past, 6 months maybe, that a lot of our favorite staff members and librarians are no longer there. I don't know why. Like some of the friendliest spaces and the best children's librarians aren't at story time anymore or left, like long-term employees. I'm talking I've seen for like 5 years at least working here. So I'm wondering if the board is aware of the staff turnover and if they're going to hold any responsibility for that, if it has to do with the actions of the board. And I'm just wondering how that will affect budgeting to have such a high turnover rate. Your staff is, what makes the library. That's why I like coming in. I recognize them. The children's librarians are great. And I'm sure you want high quality staff be working around children. So I'm a little concerned about that and just saddened by it. So hopefully you can, Alexa can maybe speak to that and give some guidance on why so many of our favorite librarians are leaving at what it seems like an increased rate. But anyway, thank you for your time and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Next we have Mariana Cochran.
Mary Cochran, Post Falls. Merry Christmas to you all. Christmas and news are the themes of my comments today. Seems unseemly to tie them together, but it's apt. This past spring, CLN hired a communications coordinator to promote CLN to the public. If we examine the Fort Lane Press as our area's primary public relations medium, we see that virtually every article about CLN is negative. Makes me wonder what's being promoted by CLN's communication coordinator under the supervision of her boss, the library director. So in light
Hold on a second. Does that qualify as something that shouldn't be said?
Sometime. Well, I would let her go.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So in light of the blatant agenda the CDA Press has to malign this board and your efforts, let's examine an operational sticking point the CDA Press will most likely mock, distort, or ignore. At May's election, the community expressed great interest in change and transparency regarding CLN's operations. CLN's YouTube video of the November 30th board meeting shows Director Alexa Eccles addressing the CLN board when asked by a trustee to provide a list of recently purchased books. She said, quote, "I want to give the board what they want. I'm a transparent person. I want to give the public information. I want to give the board information. This is so we can run a report and it can be obtained as a public records request. I'm not comfortable with that," unquote. By the way, I've clipped that quote and circulated it widely on social media, so it's sure not to be missed. Let's unpack that quote, starting with the definition of transparent. According to Merriam-Webster, free from pretense or deceit, characterized by visibility or accessibility of information, especially concerning business practices. Evasion and avoidance of providing a list of materials purchased with public funds to either the public or the trustees is the antithesis of visibility or accessibility of information. It is, in fact, taunting the board and the public with an unwillingness to be frank or free from pretense or deceit. As a nod to the classic tale of Christmas Carol, let's remember that Jacob Marley's ghost was transparent but haunted and taunted Ebenezer Scrooge. This is the CLN Library Director's job description as approved by the previous board in November 2022 and circulated nationally during the director's search that Director Eccles has contracted for. Under the principal duties on page 2, we find that, quote, "The director is responsible for ensuring the following are successfully completed for the board of trustees: prepares supporting documents, prepares regular reports for the board of the operations of the library, responsible for transparent reporting." Therefore, by virtue of Director Eccles' legally bound 2-year employment contract ending on June 5th, 2025, if a report is requested by the board, Director Eccles is bound to provide it. Not doing so is a dereliction of duties and in direct defiance of the board. In closing, Director Eccles' definition of transparent is reminiscent of another's. Per this article regarding Joe Biden's transparency, even CNN opines the administration seems to be embracing the opaque. To close with a parallel to another famous Christmas character, Director Eccles' behavior in refusing to provide the board and the public with a list of books is best described as stink, stank, stunk.
All right, thank you. And our next speaker is Teresa Burkett.
Hello, my name is Teresa Burkett, and I'm from Post Falls, and I will try not to yell at you. I would like to address the issue of censorship being considered by this board. The freedom to read and explore diverse ideas is the cornerstone of any society, and any attempt to stifle this freedom through censorship poses a serious threat to the intellectual progress and cultural richness of our community. I'm resubmitting to the board our petition of 315 signatures opposing censorship. Censorship in any form is an infringement upon the fundamental right to free expression. When we allow certain individuals to dictate what books should or should not be available to the public, we undermine the very principle upon which our democratic society is built. It is essential to recognize that the freedom to read is a freedom to explore different perspectives, to challenge our own beliefs, and to foster a society that values thoughtful diversity. We must allow parents and librarians the freedom to help young readers navigate challenging content and foster critical thinking skills that will serve them throughout their lives. The board has already addressed this issue by approving a library card for minors policy, which restricts access to the children's collection. Anything beyond this card policy opens the network to lawsuits. History has shown us the dangers of censorship, where the suppression of ideas led to stifling of progress, scientific inquiry, and social change. We must learn from the mistakes of the past and uphold the principles of intellectual freedom that have propelled our society forward. I would like to remind this board that part of your job description is to advocate for intellectual freedom and to have knowledge of the principles of intellectual freedom. I want to address another matter, fiscal responsibility or lack thereof. Being a fiscal conservative on the library board means advocating for responsible financial management and a focus on cost effectiveness within the context of the library's operation. 3 of our trustees claim to be fiscal conservatives but are failing. You have managed to hire an attorney at $275 an hour and have cost the network $18,000 in the months of September and October. Based on an approved budget, legal and professional services should not exceed $6,800 a month. Furthermore, due to the potential for litigation, this board is costing the network an additional $13,000 insurance costs. So far, the total over budget for these items is $18,800. Where will the funds come from? More cuts to programs or collection purchases? Is this your intent? Mr. Hanley has already stated he doesn't care if branches were closed due to lack of insurance. Mr. Ploss stated he wants to save taxpayer money, yet both, including Ms. Addison, are costing us more. The 3 of them have never stated they love the library and its programs, nor that they care about the staff. You have publicly acknowledged your agenda is to remove books. You are doing a disservice to this diverse community. In closing, I ask you to do the right thing for all of Kootenai and Shoshone counties, not just who voted for you.
Thank you. Next, we have Reverend Matthew L. Erickson.
Hi, I'm Pastor Matt from Calvary Lutheran Church, about a block away, and a resident of Post Falls. My 4 children, my wife, and I love this library and its staff. I'm going to read to you a book that is dangerous and obscene that Mr. Plass and Mr. Hanley have suggested needs to be removed. It's called A Church for All. It's by Gail Pittman. It goes like this. Sunday waking, day is breaking. Let's go to our church for all. Church bells ringing, joyful noises, choir singing, laughing voices. Candles glowing, banners flowing, come enter our church for all. Weak and healthy, neat and messy, poor and wealthy, plain and dressy, all embracing, spirit gracing. Each one at our church for all. Bodies wiggling, mommies reading, children giggling, daddies pleading, toddlers flailing, babies wailing. There's room at our church for all. Hands receiving, hands connecting, hearts believing, hearts accepting. Feel the Spirit, can you hear it? It's here at our church for all. My congregation endeavors to be a church for all. We take religious freedom very seriously. And when you suggest that this beautiful book, which I've owned for a lot, and probably about a third of the books on your juvenile list that you guys published that you felt needed to be removed from our library, books I own. So I'm shocked and I'm watching. Religious freedom is really, really important. Amen.
Next, we have Amy Lee.
I'm Amy Lee of Post Falls here. This is my home library. You guys may remember me as I spoke at the last library meeting about how, even though I am a homeschool mom of 6, that we don't come to this library anymore because of the books that my children would grab off the shelves, non-readers. They just would grab what was available to them and bring it home. And I found many of the books inappropriate. And here today, I stand before you again. I'm not wanting to beat the same dead horse, but to convey an experience that happened on one of our trips to pick up the books that we reserved at the library, because we don't come and just wander and grab anymore. So the other day I was in December 2nd, I was in with my daughter to pick up our library books that had been on hold. And while she was checking out, I was just perusing, and I happened to catch a book in the new biographies department, happened to catch my eye, called Down the Drain. The new biographies shelf stands right next to the hold shelf, right at the very front of the library, and directly on the way towards the separate room that they set aside for 6th through 12th graders to come and hang out during the afternoon. The book caught my eye, and the little tagline, the little blurb at the bottom says, you know, it talks about how there is hope even when life gets flushed down the drain, when you just feel like everything has just hit rock bottom. I was like, oh, that sounds like a message of hope. I wonder what she has to say. And so I flipped over the book, and I was shocked to find a porn-worthy image of a woman. This didn't print out very well, but this woman in an almost string bikini. I don't consider that appropriate to be accessible to young kids. And if it were any of my other young kids who would pick it up and flip it over on the shelf, I would be appalled. This is why we don't come to this library anymore, because of what is available to even young children on the shelves. Now, I am not calling for censorship. I am not saying that these books shouldn't be published. I haven't read this book. I didn't check it out and read it at that point. And maybe there is a message of hope in there that should be heard. But what I'm asking for is that, yes, things that are inappropriate should be placed in an area where young children cannot access it. When I printed this image out at home, I actually put a folder over the printer so that my 7 and 8-year-old would not see it, or my 13, 14, 17-year-old wouldn't see it, because I don't find that appropriate. Now, I recognize that you're being critiqued for what looks like irresponsibility financially. And I understand that that is a response to some of the bullying that has come against you and the lawsuits that you've been threatened with. And I ask that you stand up to that bullying. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Claridge.
Well, good afternoon. I wanted to speak today and thank the newest board members for doing exactly what the citizens of Kootenai County voted for you to do, to protect children from the perversion and obscenity that has been documented to be flowing into our libraries. As our Idaho legislature gets ready to convene, it is highly likely a bill will be passed that finally peels off the exemption that libraries have been hiding behind for over 40 years. No one could have guessed the degree to which this exemption has been exploited. And to those at this table who are resisting that correction, I would ask you why. Nationally, the issue of inappropriate library books for minors seems to be center stage. Parents and concerned citizens have rallied together across the country to say enough is enough, stop messing with our kids. And yet there remains by some a seemingly prideful obstruction to that passionate plea. Simultaneously, threats of a lawsuit now hang over our board. Is this an attempt by former board members to hinder necessary conviction against the onslaught of these obscene books? As a reminder, this is what was printed and circulated to our community last May. A similar comic was allowed to be printed in the Coeur d'Alene Press. And though many in Idaho are now the target of lawfare, it will not prevail against the truth. It never will. To the board majority, I would say the material selection and the withdrawal and reconsideration policy revisions are commendable and worthy to be approved. You are moving in the right direction to protect children, and I would encourage you to remember the 14,000 people that voted for you and want this healthy change. To those that will not stand up against the sexual perversion targeting our kids, including the confusing and twisted trans agenda being pushed at them, I think you should look for a different job. There are millions of people in this nation who will not be forced to deny objective reality. I fully recognize that this board is a secular, or this library is a secular institution, but even you have to adhere to community standards on these issues. I don't hate people that are in the trans agenda or in the trans movement. I'm just saying we don't push that on our kids. So don't put words in my mouth, please. I welcome the changes ahead that will uplift and bring better values to our next generation through your policy work today. Thank you for your service and your time. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Next, Next, we have Reverend Carmelis.
Hi, I'm River Morales. I am from Hayden.
Kara, could you take those papers down, please?
I wrote something, but it was kind of rushed, so might be kind of all over the place, but I've been going to the library since I was a little kid, and it's one of my favorite places to be. So I care about the library, and I think recently I looked at the draft for the materials selection policy that you guys have come up with, and I just want to say that the First Amendment is very important to me, and I think that your draft for your new material selection policy doesn't really uphold that amendment very well because, yeah, I think anytime a board is just trying to decide what is okay for people to read, that's not giving people the freedom to choose what they want to read for themselves. And even if a book is deemed offensive by someone, doesn't mean that someone else doesn't want to read it. That's kind of all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Michelle Lippert.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Michelle Lippert, and I'm a resident of Post Falls for 35 years, longtime resident. I also have a great deal of experience as an elected official, serving for 24 years on the Post Falls School Board. So I understand a lot of the things you are going through. I'm a little confused why you are not more alarmed right now about budget issues. I saw my property tax bill the other day. There's a 17% decrease in my tax dollars going to the CLN. 17%. If that's consistent across the board, you're in a lot of trouble financially. And I know that I just think that needs to be addressed. Trustee Blank several times has tried to talk about the huge increase in insurance premiums, and she's been shut down. We see that you're way over budget on your legal expenses. Why isn't this being addressed? This is huge. I understand that you want to focus on policy. My own thought about that direction is, in general, policy is usually written by the professionals. In the school district, policy changes come from our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and they come to the board and we approve them. We don't write them. And I'd like to strongly suggest you take that same position, that the policy should come from the experts. So, two things. Take a look at what you're doing with policy, ask if it's appropriate. I don't think it is. And secondly, budget concerns. It's a huge deal. Please start talking about what you're going to do with that reduced funding. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Summer Bushnell.
Hi, Summer Bushnell, Post Falls resident. I haven't been to a meeting in person in a while, so some of what I say is from watching on video, which I know is different than being here in person. I've seen online, there's a trustee that consistently says, I don't understand a lot in the meetings. And this really confuses me because I'm pretty sure this person used to run the meeting. And so my concern is this a game? Is this person being facetious or sarcastic and I'm not picking up at that on video, or are they in cognitive decline? I don't think it's any of that, but I hope that they would stop that behavior, because at least when you watch it on YouTube, it comes across very strange. Some other comments. Honestly, I don't think it's a First Amendment right for like a 10-year-old to be seeing obscene material. I think protecting minors is a good thing. If we were discussing adults, we'd be having a completely different conversation. And I'm glad that you guys are having this difficult dialogue. I think it's good. I think maybe it should be done every 2 to 3 years, maybe come up with a policy, because this is a very controversial subject and things change pretty quickly. I'd like to express my opinion on the budget issues. I think everyone up here, and maybe some other staff, I'm not aware, everyone's involved in these budget issues. I don't think it's one particular trustee or one particular employee personally. And I would like to express a different opinion than another commenter. I like that we have more than just experts writing policy. I think this is a group effort and that a lot of people should be involved, including people that have had experience with this. And to end, just thank you for recording the meetings and putting them on YouTube. It helps me watch them when I'm not able to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you to all who spoke and who showed up. Thanks for everyone who wished us a Merry Christmas and a Merry Christmas back at you to those who celebrated. We will now move on to the next section, which is, or actually before we move on to the next section, a reminder to the board members that they must obtain the floor by being recognized by the chair, and members should address the chair so we don't have heightened tensions or the back and forth conversations that exclude the rest of the board. All right, so now we will move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any?
I apologize. There was a typo. It should be the CIN November 2023 financial statements that are in your packet, and the agenda reflected September.
Should be
Where's this?
September.
It should be November.
November. It is November.
No, it's down.
On the agenda.
Oh, on the other. I'm sorry.
Mr. Boss?
So I don't have anything about this consent agenda. I'm okay with the minutes and so forth, but I did notice last time, and I forgot to say it, September 28th is missing. So we did September 27th and September 29th. September 29th, we've never had September 28th, and I would like that next month to go back and include September 28th minutes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Then I would consider a motion to accept the consent agenda with the change of November 2023 financial statements.
I move to accept the consent agenda for the 3 sets of minutes we were given, including the CIF.
It has been moved to accept the consent agenda, the three different minutes and the CIN November financial statements.
Can we amend the agenda to, or how are we going to deal with September 28th? I think it should be in the motion to accept it with the request that we add September 28th.
Okay, well, I don't think it's something that we're accepting or approving, so it would just be something to be noted in the future.
If we could just comment on it quickly. It appears there are notes on our minutes on our website. So I'm not sure if that's true, that we didn't receive them. So we don't typically post the minutes until they're approved by the board. And there are currently minutes for both meetings.
There were three meetings, 27th, 28th, and 29th. 28th has never been done. We accepted, and that's the 27th and 29th are the ones we went back and got the transcription.
So there are And I did not have minutes, but all of yours. I can email those to the board. if you-
We've never, okay, we've never, done a consent approval. I've never seen those minutes.
I can review that. And then just on the consent agenda, make sure and for the CIN November.
Right, so there's no further discussion. It has been moved to accept the consent agenda, including the three different minutes and the CIN November 2023 financial statements. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let's have it. Motion's passed. Next, we will move to Community Library Network November 2023 financial statements.
Sure.
And just, I want to reiterate to everyone that that includes the unique statistics that are there. Is it this case?
Just a clarification, there's funds going to the bond levy, but nothing going to property tax. And I just wanted to clarify that. Is that because it's a new year and we have to pay the levy first before we pay any to the taxes? And then the second question is, where, just an explanation of the, well, maybe it's in here, the URD close to look why there's funds in there now when they already paid.
What line is the URD?
It does say, I should have looked at it, 7. It says a minimal amount of income may continue to trickle from URD.
Should always be reading these.
Yeah, and it did answer that. Yeah, thank you.
Director?
I just wanted to point out and compliment even though it's your line items now line up to what's on the financial document. So great job.
It's very nice. Like,
I was gonna say that too, because I made a request and I was delighted to, I didn't have to hunt around. Thank you so much. The other thing, I would just like to point out to the trustees, line 1 on our income, that's how it looks. Because we don't get property taxes, we don't get any operational money to operate for 4 months. And that is what that line looks like. It's kind of breathtaking each month to recognize. And if you look down, we passed 16.67% of the year, but our income is at 2.19%. Those things are really important to remember as we are budgeting for our carry forward at the end of the year. That's all I have.
Trustee Plus?
My favorite topic is it's on the last page, ICS. So it's $1,692,000. What I'd like to do is what we were given in July, I think, or for the July, and you subtract out the accounts payable, grants and donation. I can see accounts payable, 9,519, but I don't know what the grants and donation is. If it's like it was in July, it'd be about 200,000. So if I subtract that out, it tells me the funds that aren't restricted are 1.48 million. And my view on that is we still have December and January, and we're spending about 390 to 400,000 a month. So that gets us down to between 700 and 800,000 left, which I think is 2 months right where we should be. I don't think there's a crisis. Can I get that confirmation what the restricted amounts for grants and donation would be?
I don't have any more updated information than what we gave you about 2 months ago, but our estimate is that the unrestricted is 500,000, not 800,000. We can update that and bring it to the board next month.
So Chair, the confusing thing is if you subtract out 209,000 from 1.69 million, it's 1.48 million. And if we take 400,000 or 390,000 is what I'm seeing, 720,000 for December and January, that's 780,000. So I don't see the 500,000 at all. And that's, anyway, well, I think we're in good shape. We got 2 months.
Trustee Blank.
I think it's really difficult for the rest of the board to understand what's being said financially by a trustee without a financial statement in front of us. And I would very much support being able to see the staff provide us with that, because it's very difficult for me to feel comfortable not having numbers on paper, and having it verified by staff for a trustee to say, oh yeah, we've got plenty of money. When staff who looks at this is saying there's concern. So my request is that we look at it again, and we look at that again, and that we bring a current sheet to us in January.
Okay. So we have consensus on that?
Yeah.
I'm consensus.
I'm happy to provide it.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great. Thanks. Trustee Robinson?
I also find it a bit confusing just because I feel like certain numbers are being subtracted, but I don't know which ones maybe aren't being subtracted. Because I'm looking at this and there's a whole lot of numbers here. So to clarify it, I think would be really nice.
Trustee Haas?
So my request, and I'd like consensus, is that this sheet every month shows the current grants and donations that we have to account for. Those are the 2 numbers. I don't know what they are. I do see accounts payable, but it's the 3 things we subtract from ICS to get how much funds are available. So if we can get a couple line items showing the current grants and donations that are restricted, because those get subtracted from ICS. That's what was presented to us in July, or for the July.
Okay, do we have consensus on that more specific request?
I don't understand what's being asked for, and so I can't give consensus. I can't participate in that.
Okay, Trustee Robinson?
If I feel like this is going to be an issue that isn't going to just be let go. And it shouldn't, I guess. I'd like to see what the other trustees even talking about. So if it has to be done by staff and presented to us, I'm all for it, because I don't understand what is being said by the trustee.
Okay, I'm in agreement. So it does sound like we have some Madam Director.
I just want to be clear. My intention is to bring the same report updated that I brought last meeting. And then if there's more specific information, when we have that information in front of us, then I think it would be more clear what you're asking for. It's not clear to me either what exactly that you're looking for. So if it's okay with the board, I'll bring the similar report to what we brought before, which was estimates, and then maybe we can clarify if there's information that's not in there.
Sure.
Trustee Haas?
So I'm not looking for estimates. I'm looking at the sheet that was handed out as of July 23rd. It said restricted funds. It's got accounts payable, grants, donations, and they add up to 198,000.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is now.
And
If you would give me those 2 grants and donations on this sheet, I can always look at accounts payable. I can add that, and then I just simply subtract that from ICS. And I know how much funds are there. Because ICS has to have these restricted funds subtracted. So just make it simple for us each month. If you could just add grants and donations to the sheet, then we can all subtract, or maybe do that subtraction for us.
That's to me. Trustee Robinson?
I believe some grants are, I guess that's what the trustee talked about when he says restricted. Because grants or donations are given for a specific reason, so they're already spent on another line item.
on the green sheets, you'll see donation come in, donation go out, or donate or grant come in and grant go out. I don't know what's being asked for either. I think that everything is already on the green sheets, but maybe it needs to be more clear or written a different way for a trustee to understand. So we all need to understand what is being asked, especially the people that are supposed to put it together. So I guess we need whatever this trustee is asking for. I feel like we already have it, but if it needs to be more clear for somebody, then I guess that's okay too.
Okay, so you're asking for what's on that white sheet, but you want it every month.
Yes, because
Okay.
I was told that ICS, you need to subtract restricted funds, that these restricted funds, which are account payable, grants and donation, are in ICS. We subtracted. And that tells you how much is in ICS that's not restricted. And I just want to make that calculation every month. So when we get to the middle of January, before the property tax payment comes in, we should have hopefully 2 months. So I just would like to see that number and not have it hidden.
Okay, so something could probably be programmed in and just get it out on that every month.
I will bring a draft of what I understand and have everybody take a look at it.
Just this.
Yeah, what we produced before, but you're now saying it's different, so that's what we can understand.
I don't know if it is.
What we had before updated, we did do that.
And you had,
Trustee Mike?
I think you've given us an updated one since then, haven't you? I can't remember what the date was, but it was fairly recent. Okay, never mind. It's okay. I was looking for it. I was pretty sure I had it in my staff,
I'm
but I.
happy to do it monthly. It takes about 20 or 30 minutes of staff time to do, but if the board finds it helpful, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. We.
Just one quick question. Do grants and donations change? If they don't change and that's the number, then I don't need to see it. But if it's changing every month, please let us know.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to accept the Community Library Network November 2023 financial statements.
You still on that?
I'll just let everyone know that I move to accept the Community Library Network November 2023 financial statements. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, and the motion carries and appeals are approved. All right, so we are moving on to circulation statistics. Comments as class?
I'm kind of surprised. We're almost to the end of the year and the the first line items. Total circulation. Well, I'm confused. Circulation last year and then last year to date circulation. What is circulation this year? Where do I look? Is that the 97,000 year to date circulation?
Second one.
Second line?
So that's circulation last year.
I'd like circulation this year to be bold and right on the top.
It is. It literally is right there.
It says circulation last year.
Total circulation at the top.
Okay, so we're half, then it is what I'm saying. It's half of what it was last year, almost half. And I guess I would like, I guess I don't want to dwell on it, but I would like a plot of the total circulation over the last 15 years or the whole year. Let's see how we're doing over time. Because we dropped to almost half from last year.
Chair,
Trustee.
I really believe that a trustee is misreading this whole paperwork.
Trustee Mike?
Yeah, circulation, total circulation, I mean, is up. And the year-to-date circulation is up from last year as well. I don't, maybe we need commas in there or something. Go ahead. Okay.
Director, I would just clarify that the library operates following the state standard of fiscal year. So this is October and November. So it goes October through September. So year to date is just reflecting 2 months of circulation data. And the numbers are actually higher.
Chair Trustee Robinson. Could maybe the director read the first 4 lines on the left and just so they're clear, just the words, just the actual words, read them out and maybe explain what they actually mean?
So yes, total circulation is 107,000. Circulation last year for the same period is 97,000. The year-to-date circulation is 213 and 199,000. So we are in the 2 months, October and November, checking out more materials than we did last year. And we're on trend to increase circulation this year.
Trustee Hannah?
Just a comment I made in the past, eventually, I'm not asking for it now because we're asking for a lot. I mean, tell me, I think it would be much more helpful to have a chart rather than a table. A table is difficult to read with all these numbers jumbled in here, which is fine. It's got its purpose. But it would be nice, I think, and Trustee Plaster mentioned before, to see how we're doing this year compared to last year, compared to the year before. Is the circulation growing or shrinking? No one can naturally just look at these numbers quickly and ascertain whether we're going up or down or sideways. And it's nice if we compare this year to last year, but how did that go before COVID? How did it go 5 years ago? It doesn't need to go back 100 years, but it'd be nice to see, let's say, maybe 10 years worth of statistics. Is circulation increasing, decreasing? There may be a few other things like that on the same sheet of paper that would be helpful in a chart form rather than table or both. But I'm not asking for it at the moment, but I think that would be a big picture, a lot easier to see a chart. Things are going up, down, or sideways rather than trying to digest whatever. I'll just say 10 columns and 30 or 40 columns, rows long. So that's all I have.
Yeah, so the figures do eventually kind of sink in, although every once in a while it's like, wait, how does it go? And occasionally we could just ask for one a few years ago to be pulled and compare it. Then that happened, a whole bunch of extra work. Trustee Claus.
Maybe it's the titles or the description needs to change. I just got confused this time, but I would like a plot of year to year, end of year, and I'd like to get a consensus from the board that we get this in the next couple of months. Over the last 10 to 15 years, how this has gone.
So just pull on from like 10 years ago.
All 10 years.
Director.
I would just point out to the board that the Idaho Commission for Libraries compiles library statistics, and that information is available on their website, and it includes Community Library Network. And so I think it's actually more helpful to compare our library to other libraries. I'm happy to send those files to the board.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. I like the comparative, seeing other libraries grow, things like that. I'd be happy to do under a director's report at some point, a presentation on trends and how we're doing in services. It will take a little bit of time to compile that, and I will need more than 10 minutes to do a report.
So do you have consensus on requesting her to do that?
What is the consensus on?
To do the report she's suggesting.
Or to have the director send us files, the comparative files?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm happy to send that.
Okay, good. So we have consensus on that. And our time is up. But Trustee Blank, I saw your hand last time, so go ahead.
I just wanted some clarification on new patrons by card type. It has 3, I just wanted to be, I'm pretty sure I know what this means, but adults, of course, I understand that. Minor, is that the teen basically the teen card, is that?
So at the time, if I can answer,
Yes, go ahead.
yes. At the time, we've only had a child restricted card, so this is reflecting only the child restricted card. Starting now, we are also offering a teen restricted card, and so we will start compiling for the statistics that extra breakdown.
What I was asking was that minor and minor restricted, what are those two? Those, the under new patrons by card type, it says adult and then minor restricted. Those card types we refer to like the teen and then the juvenile? No, nobody knows?
I don't.
Okay.
Can we,
Without objection?
Because it's our new policy, I'd like, if that's what that is, I'd like to hear.
As Alexa stated, we have not been issuing the teen cards. That data is not on here.
Oh, okay.
What these three types represent are cards issued to adults, cards that are issued to children under 18, and then cards that are issued to children under 18 where their caregiver or parent has requested restricted access. So we have always had an adult and a minor.
Oh, okay, okay.
We just now have minor restricted,
Okay.
and then we will have a fourth kind added, which is the teen restricted.
Okay, so what it shows is, so the adults indicates cards that are given to people over 18 and over. Minor is everybody under that. And then we'll show the restricted cards. Okay, thank you.
All right, so our time's up for that section. We're moving on to facilities annual reports, staff presentation.
I wanted a couple minutes, we set up the projector.
Sure.
And then I'll blind you guys if I want. I'll find things. Over here.
Randy, do you think we should have adjourned? I'm sure we'll find into 100.
Yeah, because I have an issue that there's no warrant. That's not what we've got. There you go. Well, I'm Ryan Sapia, the facility manager for the Community Library Network. In my position, I'm responsible for ensuring all library facilities are functioning efficiently, providing a safe operational condition for the public and staff, including adhering to federal, state, and local codes and the American with Disabilities Act. To achieve this, I work with one full-time facilities specialist and vendors to manage the general maintenance and repair of the buildings, facilities, vehicles, and equipment. My core purpose is to ensure CLN facilities remain in operational condition at all times. My time is spent managing short and long-term projects, overseeing work completed by vendors, managing the facilities budget, and supporting library staff. One of the tools I use is which manages facilities is property track. The software helps identify trends, recurring problems that need further discussion. The software helps with budgeting, forecasting, and planning. Property track allows library staff to input facility work orders for about 30 work orders submitted each month. Some of the work orders can be completed in a day, while some require multiple weeks to complete. In my responsibility, I prioritize work orders, evaluating budget constraints, and ensuring work is complete in a timely and professional manner. Tenders are another tool to ensure that the safe operation of library is continued. Vendors, we have vendors that help specific responsibilities, including janitorial, landscaping, snow removal, pest control, and fire prevention. Upcoming project for fiscal 24, the Hayden roof. The roof shows signs of wear, leaks in specific areas. Earlier this year, the board authorized a contract for replacement. The work is expected to begin this spring. Hayden lighting is less than ideal during the fall and winter months. It can be difficult to identify hooks while browsing, while there are opportunities to gain efficiency with the latest generation of LED lighting. The Hayden parking lot reseal and restriping. Every 2 to 3 years, you reseal and restripe parking lots as part of the preventive maintenance measures. The Harrison Water and ADA ramp, based on the engineer architectural recommendations, the drainage installed last year helps control the excessive surface water. The engineering report was received and advised to install a new French drain and backfill the appropriate material to manage the water below the surface. Currently, the entrance at the Harrison Library is non-ADA compliant. We have recommendation from the architect to create a ramp that meets ADA requirements. Both these projects are expected to begin this spring. Spirit Lake security cameras. It's the oldest system in the district and has outdated software requiring repetitive repairs. Pinehurst parking lot, also the tree sale every 2 to 3 years. Which recently striping helps with the preventive maintenance. District-wide HVAC controls. Upgrade to provide remote troubleshooting capabilities, which will save the cost of manually troubleshooting HVAC issues at CIN libraries. Projects within the next 1 to 3 years. The Pinehurst roof. The roof was installed in 1998, and it's nearing its end of life, and it's showing signs of wear. Pinehurst programming space remodel. Pinehurst received a donation to partially pay for improvement in the public space and possibly adding a covered outdoor programming meeting space. Spirit Lake lights in Harrison, once replaced, will be an opportunity to gain efficiency, the latest generation of LED lighting. That's the Harrison lighting and Spirit Lake lighting. I thought that out of my place. Spirit Lake sidewalks. The sidewalks are uneven, creating a tripping hazard and an ADA violation. The concrete will need to be removed and a new sidewalk poured. The Hayden staff room remodel. About 5 years ago, the district determined the need to create a safe space for staff and customers in the event of security threat. The Hayden staff room remodel will be designed to create a safe space by increasing public space. Falls roof was also installed in 1998 with nearness life, end of life, and is showing signs of wear. Post Falls HVAC cooling towering system was installed in 1998. The industry standard is 20 years of life. Post Falls Children Remodel. Post Falls Library received a donation, partially paying for a renovation of the children's room. The architect has designed a plan to improve the lifespan, the line of sight, while moving the bookshelves and creating a safe space for children, which created improved customer experience. The district fleet consists of 8 vehicles. Routine maintenance is routinely performed with a focus on expanding the life of the vehicle. The district will need to plan to replace the vehicles as needed. Facilities master plan. For the trustee manual, trustees face the challenge of planning library services for the future. Increasing space for additional locations may become a major consideration. A facilities master plan will guide the trustees in deciding whether to build a new facility, renovate, or expand current facilities, or find existing space to convert into a library. For the trustees manual, trustees can study services need, explore alternative, and project funding. And to establish priorities, the facilities master plan provides a roadmap for how to get there. Community Library Network maintains 58,000 square feet, the average age of 30 years, and a total insured value of 19 million. The average age of the fleet are 15 years, with a total insured value of 450,000. It is expected that the library will require significant support and facility support. In fiscal year 24 budget, a part-time facility specialist position was removed. It would be asked that the trustees consider budgeting a full-time facility specialist for fiscal 25. Doing this will ensure a safe, effective operation of facilities and fleet. Questions?
I have a couple. So all the parking lots don't get resurfaced?
It rotates.
Oh, you just put the ones that are upcoming?
Correct. I don't want to do them all and,
Right.
try to spread it out.
Okay. And then also, the children's section at the Post Falls, that's what you were talking about, right?
Yes.
I thought that the donation covered the entire expense. Is that not correct?
Probably originally when we were there, yes, but not.
And was that like 4 years ago that was donated to that? 3 years ago?
That Jennifer can answer for us.
Yeah, it was at least, I want to say 3 years ago. Actually, the gentleman, we had 2 donations that were slated to help fund the renovations. The gentleman who did the original donation and his wife's father was sadly disappointed to see that no progress had been made on it. His wife had since passed away, so it was kind of a disappointment.
I bet. So it's the same plan basically, but now that money won't cover it?
Yeah, also has.
Oh, that's a shame.
Question. So Randy, some of these are new to me, but are we gonna get a kind of a description or proposal of each of these things in detail and we vote on them, or have they already all been decided? Like the LED lighting, is that just changing bulbs, or is that redoing the whole ceiling with new?
Replace all the fixtures with big LED lighting and controls, so we can gain that efficiency. And that would include an incentive back, Vista, as long as we get their standards.
Are we gonna get a description of these projects, or?
I believe that's already been in your budget. I believe at some point that did come across. Like, I'm sure that you might be in.
The previous board approved them all, is what you're.
So as normally part of the budget process, we talk about facility concerns, facility items. That really did not happen this year as it's kind of been pointed out, and that's unfortunate. Randy's really speaking to what we're currently working on, so like the roof and the lighting, which have already been approved. But we're also sort of giving you the heads up that there are items that we need to talk about that are on the horizon 1 to 3 years that have not been budgeted and need to be budgeted.
Okay, as long as we are going to get a chance to talk about it.
Like I said, the ones that are approved, we'll probably talk a little bit less. We're going to talk a little bit about some today because we have a resolution to the capital funds, and so we'll go over those a little bit. But yes, the items that still need approval will go into greater detail.
Can our opportunity as a board to approve these is at budget time. The staff brings us what looks like the facilities need to happen, and then we make a decision on how we're going to budget for those. We have never done it piecemeal unless it's an emergency.
Well, it would be good to be apprised what all the costs are. Right, so moving on, there's some. Trust loss. And Cameron, sorry.
I just want to say, long before we ever get to the budget stage, we are gonna have to have like ballpark idea of what each of those unbudgeted items or facilities are. I'm not saying a quote actually, but we're gonna have to have a pretty good idea so we can prioritize, so.
Sure,
Right,
sure.
so-
I was just gonna say, for something like the Post Falls safe space, I don't understand it. I hope we get an explanation, but I don't know why we have to remodel everything or what's the motivation. So anyway, for later.
I think that could be answered now. I would love for that to be answered.
Yeah, that's some like remodels to every children's section maybe aren't absolutely necessary, but maybe they are.
So I would just say that there are some plans that have already been written by architects. I know specifically for the children's area and for the Hayden Safe Workroom area. So it also improves efficiency as well as safety. There's been, I'm going to say, kind of a security audit. Public libraries have become locations of threat from members of the public, and so making sure that there are spaces that can be secured are important. And so the Hayden Library, the design of the Hayden Library has been addition upon addition upon addition, and so Hayden really struggles in particular with that issue. And so the balance of staff space, the situation. So there are already plans written up, planning several of those. And so estimates have been given, and as they've kind of said, they've risen because they weren't completed in that time frame.
Ms. Blake?
Isn't Hayden the only facility that doesn't have a safe space? That
is correct.
We have that is for staff security. It is the safe spaces are for where if there's an immediate threat to people's physical well-being, they can go in there, shut the door, and there's usually a way out as well. And Hayden has been a holdover from that. So to not do that we would be placing that staff would be lots more vulnerable than the rest of the staff in the district.
If I could recommend, I do believe there's been a gap because we didn't discuss facilities this last budget year. And so I would recommend that we put that on the agenda and get all the trustees up to speed, so to speak, before we begin next season, if you will, for budgeting.
All right, then we'll move on. Thank you very much for your report. I look forward to further information. It's time for the Post Falls annual report.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Kraft. I'm the manager of the Falls Library. And I'm happy to give you my annual report this year for fiscal year 2023. I'm going to give you a little, very brief history of the Post Falls Library. In 1910, Mrs. Annie Patterson, and she took responsibility for maintaining a library in her home on the corner of First and Frederick. She had 5 shelves of books that were accessible to whoever needed it when she was home. So she had to be home. In 1912, the library moved from her home into a small upstairs room in Noble Hall, where in the middle, Mrs. Lewis was the librarian. On December 7th, 1915, when the village council drew up and approved the charter that officially established a tax-supported public library. In 1966, the building moved into the first building that was designed and built specifically for a public library, and it was at this current location. And this is the exterior of the 66 and interior. It was quite a lovely building, I think. But eventually the needs of the community outgrew the 1,500 square foot building. So in 1988, the building in which we are currently standing opened that year in 1988. Post Falls Library transitioned into being part of the Community Library Network in 2010, joining the libraries in Athol, Harrison, Hayden, Hurst, Rathdrum, Spirit Lake, and the Bookmobile. So as everybody in this room knows, demographics have been changing in Post Falls. It used to be thought that the growth in Post Falls was largely attributed to retired people who were moving here because they could get more bang for their buck, buying a house. And that has really changed. So the median age now, according to the US Census Bureau and World Population Report, the median age is actually 34 now, and over half the population is under 65. I was just interested in a few of the stats that the Census Bureau put out. Bachelor's degree is 17%, which is about half of the national average, which is 35%. But homeownership is pretty high, 71, renters 30. And I was pretty surprised by the projected population growth, but maybe not everyone in here is, that by 2029, it could be about 83,000. But we're gonna break it down to a little closer to where we are now. So the Post Falls population in 2019, so 4 years ago, was 36,000. 4 years later, we're at 50,000. So that's a 28% increase. Average income is 35,000 a year. Poverty level is at $15,000 a year. So I was pretty surprised that the poverty rate Post Falls Library is 12,000, or sorry, not 12,000, 12%. And that over 1,700 children in this area live in households below the poverty level. And about 30% live in households receiving public assistance. So I really thought that with that level of children needing assistance and families needing assistance, that our free services are more vital than ever. We check out about 31,000 items a month. That's about 1,000 a day. And as often, our peak, in fact, record-breaking checkouts was this August with 34,000. And August circulation is often high because that's due to heavy participation in our summer reading program. And our circulation has increased as I compared 2019 to 2023. So over the 4 years, circulation has increased steadily and about 9%. So the chart, I apologize, is very small, a little bit hard to read. But in September of 2019, it was 29,000. September of this year, it was over 31,000. So definitely has steadily increased. We also average about 14,000 visitors a month. So that's about 500 a day. And as of 2 days ago, we had 19,600 and some patrons who have Post Falls listed as their home library. So among our core services are, of course, our collection, our books, and early literacy. We have over 73,000 items in our collections. And on days when we hold our very popular story time programs for the kids, the children's room is very heavily used. And as you can see from this one and this one, it's also very heavily trashed. So it's definitely a very, very busy place. An average early literacy program can attract over 100 attendees. And we host about 500 early and child literacy programs each year, averaging over 16,000 kiddos. Our juvenile circulation makes up more than 30% of our checkouts, with adult averaging about 23, and our other collections, including online resources, making up the rest. Also have digital and health literacy. So digital literacy is a very large part of what we do on a daily basis. We also offer regular monthly classes, teaching everything from how to navigate our catalog to downloading books and ebooks, discovering and making the most out of our digital resources, and finding help creating resumes, job hunting, etc. We also offer one-on-one assistance with technology in whatever form the patron finds is best for them. We also host a variety of health literacy events, including our Evening of Hope, which helps attendees navigate the difficult journey of battling cancer. Many Evening of Hope events are filmed and are posted to our YouTube channel so that those who are not able to attend can still benefit from the information. And that has been a partnership we've had for a number of years, and it's been so well received and so well appreciated by our community. All right. Post Falls Library has always been known for excellent customer service, and I still love it when patrons come in and say that they come here instead of Coeur d'Alene because we're nicer. Staff turnover can have an impact on that because it does take time to hire, recruit, and train employees to provide that stellar service. This past fiscal year, we had a third of our staff turned over, so that was challenging to get them up to speed. But I'm always so pleased to say that despite those challenges, we have a really amazing team. I often receive verbal and written testimonials from patrons thanking us for adding value to their lives. I have shared just one letter that we received recently. Dear Library Board, thank you so much for Tech Talk. That's our monthly class. It had a tremendous effect on my life and my extended family's life. We've learned so much and passed on information to each other. Thank you so much. So notes like that and verbal testimonials like that are really what make the day seem great and what we're here to provide. And last but not least, I wanted to share some of the local nonprofit organizations that we partner with. This slide represents just several of those organizations that we've partnered with this year to enrich and empower the citizens of this community. Thank you. And do you have any questions? Yes.
Couple, I had asked last month about video games, and I saw you actually had that on your chart, that small chart of all the circulation. And you had 217 per month. But I thought I was told we didn't have a way to keep track of it. How are you discerning how many video games?
So I don't run the statistics. So that is our tech person who puts those statistics together. So I would hazard a guess that there's a way that they can, in COHA, which is our circulation system, that they can designate a certain item type or collection type to gather those statistics.
I'd like to explore that more later.
So yeah, I know. Okay.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, so. Now we will have our director's report.
Sorry. Thanks, guys. So I did bring out for you guys my director's report this time. I wanted to bring to your attention two items that seem very important. And the first is bookmobile service update.
That's our table packet.
It is in our table packet, yeah. I did give you a copy last time. I just read it very quickly as it was pointed out. And this time there is a copy there, but I'll read it as well. The library's rural service bookmobile was purchased in 2007 and has been out of service for several weeks. If you look on our website, it does reflect that. We have a brake repair, fan belt, exhaust manifold, gasket, door handle. The estimate is over $6,000 and it'll take about 60 days to complete the work. The value of the vehicle is I estimate between $35,000 and $65,000. The library's technology-focused Discovery bus is a converted and used city transit bus. It was built in 1999 and has over 96,000 miles. It's currently winterized and does not provide service all year round. It additionally has a repair estimate of $6,000 for suspension, leaking, so, etc. The value of the vehicle is estimated to be about $10,000. Library administration is estimating that service will sunset within the next year soon. The buses are aging and costly to operate. The vehicles would be designated surplus and sold. Many bookmobile clients also use one of CIN's 7 branch library facilities or download ebooks and e-audio on the popular Overdrive platform with the Libby app. Residents served by bookmobiles that are not able to drive to a library facility may qualify for homebound and bookstore mail service, a new effective service mission that the library is reviewing to initiate. So just kind of an update. I don't know if you have any questions about the bookmobile. Or it's expensive at this point. The typical procedure for bookmobile is to put aside 1/10 of the replacement cost in your capital budget. So then between 10 and 15 years, you essentially have the replacement cost already funded. This district has not done that. The vehicle is 18 years old, so it's already been operating for the last 3 years beyond the recommended or estimated life expectancy. And so we have not made any final determinations, but I wanted to bring that to the attention of the board that there may need to be some further exploration of services to be compliant with ADA and to address the fact that we may not have a vehicle.
Yes, and so the books by mail service is expected to be less expensive than the courier services?
Well, it's less than a commercial vehicle and driving it out to rural areas. It would likely be related to accommodation for disability. We're currently exploring what other libraries offer, but that's both of those.
So you've got 2 buses listed here, the first 2 paragraphs. So 2 of them are out of commission. I'm not familiar enough. So we don't have anything, or do we have still 1?
So Outreach Services has several vehicles. They also have a Sprinter van is what you'll probably hear us call it. We take the Sprinter van to adult care facilities and do what we call lobby stops or provide service that way. We still have that vehicle. We also use minivans and other tools at our disposal. But in terms of bookmobile, which are the very large commercial vehicles, We have two. One of them is what we would consider a full service vehicle. It has books. And then the other one is technology focused, and that's the Discovery Bus that was renovated to work alongside our programs for emerging technology. And we've had that for several years. That bus, it doesn't go out in winter. It's a transit bus with like the accordion two-part, and it's not as maneuverable on ice and other things. And so we typically don't take that out in the winter time. We go to a lot of schools and things like that with that vehicle. And so I think it's concerning that such a large repair cost on that one when the value of the vehicle is so low. I don't think we're going to get our money out of that. And so I'm not really going to, I think is going to take serious consideration. The other vehicle, I think in order to obtain that resale value, we do need to so we will be repairing the brakes, but whether that goes back into service or whether we sell it, surplus it and sell it is what we'll need to decide on the horizon. But again, it's very expensive. It's this brake part is no longer a part you can get off the shelf or have easily sent to us. It's going to be manufactured. Again, it's 3 years beyond the estimated life. So it will have increasing costs. So, what's you like?
So, the value of the vehicle, the bookmobile right now is between $35,000 and $65,000. Is that what you're saying?
So it's difficult to estimate, but in reviewing what other bookmobiles have sold for and reviewing the cost of what we paid for it and spreading that over 20 years, that's the best figure I can give you at this point.
Is that's not a replacement cost? That's what that vehicle is worth right this minute?
Scrap, surplus, what
Okay.
someone might pay for it. And the reality is it's worth what someone will pay for it.
Right, but that is not a replacement. I mean, a replacement vehicle, should we want to continue, is like $1 million.
$500,000 to $600,000.
Yeah, it's
for
very
a bus. And we would recommend more of a Sprinter or a smaller vehicle, and those are about $300,000.
Okay, so we're having a lot of back and forth here and other people are being excluded.
Oh, I wouldn't want to do that. Sorry.
I was actually gonna ask about the Discovery Bus, the 7,000 to 10,000 value. I would think just on size alone, it would be worth more than that. So, obviously, if it has a lot of repairs that it needs, that's not a lot of money to even resell it. Is that the right 7 to 10?
It's difficult to give an absolute estimate, but we paid less than $8,000 for it several years ago. And we did receive grants, and it does have a wrap, and it does have a generator added. But it is relatively old and has high miles, and the market for a
Gigantic Caterpillar bus.
again, what someone would pay for it. So, I mean, we could get more. I'm just saying that because we didn't pay much for it, I'm very reluctant to do any improvement to that. I don't think we would get our money back.
Okay. Pursue the update on that after you guys have looked at it more. We have 2 more minutes until your director's report, so we want to.
Do you want me to answer that, or do you want?
Answer her report. I would hope we wouldn't cut off. But bookmobile circulation has been going down. Is that correct? I'm looking at it here and it looks like, so that would be a consideration. I mean, if it were booming, that would be horrible to think about.
You know, the district was founded 40 years on bookmobile service, and so it's a little bittersweet, is what I would say. But Cooney County in 40 years, Shoshone County in 40 years has really changed. And we've opened a lot of branches, and there are a lot of different service options. So we're still looking to serve people in rural areas and around our service area, but just finding more cost-effective, efficient ways to do it. And then the second item that I wanted to bring to your attention is actually something I'm very proud of. We are talking about the library cards for minors policy implementation update. Definitely worked very hard with this. All libraries are now offering parents and guardians 3 library card options: the child limited, the teen limited, and open access. All libraries also have a new teen collection geared for 13 to 15-year-olds. The new teen labeled items for each library amount to between 40 and 100 titles at each location, with plans for additional purchases and collection growth. A press release and additional marketing and communication efforts will be occurring over the next couple of weeks. Instead of recommending to the board that we update the library cards for minor policy now that implementation is complete, I actually would recommend combining it with our selection policy. I did attach to your table packet and sent it out earlier today a combined policy for your review to get an idea of what I'm describing. It basically takes the selection policy and fuses it with the material, the library cards for minors policy. I believe that new draft that I've presented falls within the legal framework outlined by legal counsel recently. The board can act immediately on adopting this policy. Library administration and collection development staff recommend this policy without reservation. This policy fulfills the desire of the community, board, and staff to protect children. In terms of policy management, it's more efficient, 1 policy instead of 2 or 3 policies. The policy infuses more productive and clear language, like graphic, visual, or written depiction of sexual acts. The policy is written in plain, friendly, easy to understand manner, not legal jargon. The new combined policy does a better job of explaining to parents and staff about how cards and the new collection categories work together to help families, and how this gives parents more control to dial in the right level of access for their children. Trustee policy, I have a question.
I don't think we should spend time talking about this now until we get to the material policy. I wanted to ask about the teen card. I thought we were doing this in phase, but you're telling us that the open access where parents can choose to give their minors access to the whole library, including adult section, that is implemented now? I thought that was the 3rd phase that was coming later. So parents can now give a card to their children that gives them adult access?
I think the phase already did, but.
That's the original card.
Yeah.
No, that was just under 12.
Original card.
Okay.
Have had the ability to give, the parents have had the ability to give a library card to their child for full access for all of the time that this library has been open.
If I could just.
Okay, you do that shortly.
Yes, the minor card policy had implementation in phases. So there was a summer implementation of the child limited card, and then January 1st was the implementation of the teen card and the corresponding teen collection. And so this is the 21st, and we're ahead of schedule. So parents can today go to any library and get a teen card, or go to any branch and find our new teen books.
All right, so we will be, Trustee Hammond.
I'd like to bring up, if this is including the director's report, part of the report last meeting back on the 16th, Trustee Truss, I can't get that from there, asked the director to provide a list of all the new books that are purchased each month. And a long conversation ensued. I'm going to read this as quickly as I can. Part of the library director's commentary included the statistics of 2,472 books being purchased year to date, monthly editions, clarification of the collection, both physical and digital. And when asked for all books, again by Trustee Plus, the director said she was unclear and asked for clarity. She also expressed her characterization of that request, stating it's not an appropriate level of responsibility for trustees in oversight.
I'm going to recommend that this isn't on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what that call to
Is this part of
something
the,
is.
I don't know, is this part of the director's?
Point of order, thank you, point of order.
Okay.
This is her time to give us her report. She's already been cut short.
Oh,
I was supposed to only a minute left.
okay.
So the 10 minutes is up. I think it's on to legal counsel. Agenda reflects.
Well,
Okay.
to the chair.
I guess we could bring that up at the end.
Okay, yeah,
It's
okay.
All right, so,
fair.
everything,
It is part of the library report
That's
of
what I thought.
the library director, and they do list 267 purchases. I'm again asking that we get a list every month of what is purchased. And if we could just have a quick consensus to approve that
Good.
request.
conflating, director's report with the manager's reports.
Visuals of each library is sort of part of the director's report, but anyway. bring it up.
It's not part of the director's report.
All right, so moving on to legal counsel.
Where does it fall in?
And request for,
It was part of the,
It was part of the library
that's what I
report
thought,
last
it's
month.
part of the library. So I'll make it a new agenda item then. At the end.
And I'm sure you'll get it.
Did everyone get the case I just handed out, Burden versus Crawford County? The site for this case is 2023 US District Lexus 161533. The Westlaw site is 2023 WL 5944154. This is another case out of the District of Arkansas. We have previously discussed the Fayetteville case, and this also concerns Crawford County. Arkansas, like Texas and Idaho and other states, have recently passed laws related to materials harmful to minors, or what would be considered obscene. And this case is interesting, and I think on point to our discussions today to help frame the shift that we're taking related to the potential exposure that we could face from both sides of the aisle as well. And so I wanted to point this out. You can read it in your own time. Ask me further questions if you have them. But I'd like to point you to page 2 under background. This case is about a policy that was implemented, and it was alleged that the Crawford County Library System removed books from children's sections containing LGBTQ themes, and they affixed a color label to those books and placed them in a new section called the social section. So a group of plaintiffs sued here, and the key takeaways from this case is that the allegations in this case were enough to confer standing on the plaintiffs, and it was a pretty low bar related to the First Amendment. And the court notes on page 4, on the second full paragraph, you'll see a bold 11 there. It says, to put the matter more succinctly, plaintiffs have standing to bring both of their First Amendment challenges to the county's policy, because one can reasonably infer from the allegations in the amended complaint that plaintiffs have been directly, negatively, and concretely impacted by the policy. That does not necessarily mean the county's policy violates the First Amendment, but it does mean plaintiffs have the right to ask this court to decide whether the county's policy violates the First Amendment. So you'll see what those claims are, the bottom paragraph there. Respect to the Establishment Clause claim, the court notes they'll engage in a historical practices and understandings analysis pursuant to the Kennedy versus Bremerton Supreme Court case, which abrogated the Lemon test. And then on page 5, the court discusses, second full paragraph, the right to access information claim.
I'm sorry,
Go
second
ahead.
full paragraph or second?
Page 5, second full paragraph, top line.
Right now?
Yes, turning now to the right to access information claim. I think this is a very helpful case to predict how an Idaho federal court may analyze, excuse me, a potential challenge to a policy. So I say that to give context to my recommendation. We are not necessarily talking about access, because as it stands in the library, any child can access any material in the library, right? And there's a policy that relates to what a minor, I shouldn't say child, I guess I should say minor, what a minor can borrow. So if a parent comes in with their child and their child doesn't have a library card, the child is not restricted from accessing any material in the library unless the parent prohibits that directly. The parent can check out any material in the library for the child, and we cannot prohibit that, right? Unless it violates Idaho code as it's defined now, which we shouldn't have that material anyway. And then the third circumstance is one of the library cards for minors that are now implemented. And we have three categories, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Eccles. We have a 0 to 12, a 13 through 15, and then above that to 18. And those will have a collection associated with each one of those. And that collection is going to have a separate implementation policy that's tied to that age group. And so the access versus borrow analysis is important because what we're really doing is saying anything that's harmful to minors is illegal to have in the library. That's very clear. I think that's an easy policy to implement. The harder policy to implement is what library materials are associated with each age category that we're implementing now. And that's one that there is no case I'm aware of that specifically delineates those bounds. So I think also it's appropriate to adjust the expectations about how much time it takes to create the policies. We've put a lot of work into these and I think they're getting better and they're good, but I wouldn't say 4 to 6 months is an inappropriate amount of time. That's about where we're at for this policy. So I think we're getting close to spending enough time. There's no incentive to rush here because we can get sued from either side. We can get sued from a parent who doesn't want a certain type of material in the library, or sued even by a child who says their access has been infringed. And now we're going to be stuck with a historical practices analysis, which is going to be very costly to litigate. Plaintiffs can easily plead past the standing, and that's in the Verdon case. And it won't necessarily mean that what the library did violated the First Amendment. So we could be right and still lose, right? Because we have to defend it and spend money. So I think my recommendation now is that we have been presented with a draft that implements the library for minors card with the selection and withdrawal policies. And so I think the board should consider how that policy might affect the implementation of this program. And so when we have this new policy, there's almost a sub policy of implementation. Correct me if I'm wrong here again, where the library staff takes what the board sets forth and then they kind of the nuts and the bolts of how do they take this book and which category do they put that book in the library? And that's almost a sub policy of policies. And so I think the board should consider how the two drafts it's proposing affect the implementation of the library cards for minors policy specifically. And the other issue that I would like the board to consider is now that this when did the policy start, the implementation of it? It's like this week or last week, right? With all three subcategories.
We have it today. It officially was due the first of the beginning.
Right. And so we're now generating new data related to which books are in which age category. And so it would be prudent to have a minimum amount of data that you could assess in order to determine your performance related to the policy. And so we have this new implementation of the minors cards, but we're also going to have now immediately an entire new policy that affects the libraries for minors cards. And so I think that's critical on measuring our progress and the actual impact it may have on a person's access to the materials, which will be directly relevant to any potential lawsuit. That we have a framework for how we collate and compile and analyze that data. And so I think my recommendation to boil it down based upon the Verdon case, what we're seeing in Texas, Arkansas, and then anticipating what we're going to have in the Idaho legislature now is that we at least take some time to consider the director's new policy, so that maybe consider that today and discuss it. I think both drafts we could make work. with a few minor changes. One specifically is the issue of in whole or in part. And that's critical for a facial challenge, that there's no analysis of library materials that's conducted in part, because that leaves too much discretion for an individual state actor to make a biased or with animus or a undue, an impermissibly religious or politically motivated viewpoint-based decision. So I guess my recommendation is, when it comes to time to consider these policies, you have time set aside for material selection and withdrawal. It would be appropriate then to discuss those policies together as it relates to the staff's proposed policies. And so I think either one of these we can make work, but we necessarily need to consider the staff's policies now that we have them. Does that make sense? So don't not consider the director's proposed policies when we come into this discussion, because I think it will affect their implementation of the library's minors cards. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, Chair.
Trustee Robinson.
You're calling this the staff's draft, basically, I think that's what you said. Did you have any part in asking the staff to help clarify the other 2 or 3 drafts and to possibly make it into one that is legible?
This whole time I've been receptive to anyone's input, and so I guess I don't entirely understand your question.
Well, you're calling it the staff draft, and I don't recall the board consensus saying have the staff draft a policy. So I'm wondering if you, as our legal counsel and talking with staff, suggested to them that maybe they clean up the other policies because they were confusing, and to make it a nice tidy little draft. Do you get my question now?
Yeah, sure.
I did send an email to the board and had mentioned that it was after a conversation that we had had about the minor card and about implementation. So there wasn't a conversation where that concept of bringing them together did come, but it was, I wouldn't say it was direction. It was just after a conversation.
Sure.
But what I'm saying, I guess, is are you,
Hammer back and forth again. We need to go to a different.
because the answer is no,
But that's the way Robert's rules works.
no, that's how your rules work.
So my question to legal counsel is, this case you're giving us here today, it's talking about removing books or relocating books. It's not talking about acquisition. I didn't see that any place, at least what you presented. I still firmly believe, from what I saw on that Llano County case, that the libraries are given wide discretion and wide discretion in their selection and acquisition policy. And the court is not going to be able to tell us you have to buy certain kind of books, because we might not have the money. Those books might not exist. All these reasons, they can't tell us what we have to buy. I don't think it would fly to say we're not going to buy certain kind of religions, because we'd be showing bias towards religions or something. But I don't see where this changes anything. We've got a separate withdrawal policy, and we're not taking them out of the library. So we're following First Amendment. And then, so maybe you can clarify why you think we should go to one other policy, but in my mind, the minor cards policy is another policy that I want to work on. I wanted to work on it when I came into office, and it's not as high a priority as this. We can still go put the levels into that and basically say which direction these books go. I don't know why it has to be combined with this. This is just, these two are just saying what we buy and what we, or how we get rid of books.
Yeah, when we began the discussion, I didn't understand that the library director was implementing the library cards for minors system they had. And I had a discussion with her about that, quite lengthy discussion to understand what that looks like practically for implementation. And so if I'm applying the standard, the legal standard, I need to understand how we get the books and put the books on the shelf. And I think the Library Cards for Minors program has changed the process of selection because of the categories that they're creating. And I also think that this is what we're doing at Community Library Network is unique, and it's cutting edge, and it's could potentially set a national trend. And so that's just why my message today is, let's not rush. Let's get this right, because we have a lot of good things going for us right now. And if we make one mistake, people are looking to make examples out of that. And so I want to build on the positivity. I think the Library for Minors card program is a great idea and concept, but if we don't see how it's implemented, it's hard for me to analyze what the new policy's effect would be in the real world versus just theoretically.
Yeah, I guess it was just surprising to walk in and have all that there, that, you know, it would have been good to have it beforehand, but, but maybe it would be, good to have, like, instead of giving generalities, tell us exactly what portions of this policy need to be changed.
So the 15 minutes is up. So do you want to move on to the discussion?
Yes, we're moving on to discussing the material selection policy. Since discussion sections are short and head off topics, I move to limit debate speeches to 2 minutes for the meeting. This is motions to debate, or motions to limit debate are not debatable, so we'll just go straight into the vote. So all those in favor say aye. Okay, the ayes have it, and the effect is that debate speech limited to 2 minutes for the remainder of the meeting.
Sure.
Trustee Plas?
I'd like to put a motion on the table that we discuss the material selection policy and approve it to be implemented.
The one that we've been working on?
Yes, and as part of that discussion, legal counsel can weigh in, but what's on the table, what the motion is to approve it.
Okay, so is that so? It has been moved to, I'm sorry.
I should have written this one out. I move that we approve the material selection policy
The board draft.
that has been given to legal counsel.
So move to approve the materials selection policy board draft. So that brings the business before the board. All right, so council could tell us.
Okay.
So the section needs to be changed.
Objective and scope of policies on that first sentence where it relates to the selection and acquisition of books. The phrase regardless of previously acquired. I think might create an issue under the through method in the way that the library director catalogs their records. And so there's some confusion to me on what previously acquired means. And if the director can speak more to that, but there's multiple collections that aren't just print books, they're electronic books, you know, the digital section of the library. And so I think that creates a problem with implementation. So that's the first line under objective and scope. And the third sentence regarding a specific book or material not being contemplated during the enactment of the policy is unusual for a policy. I don't think it's prohibited, but I don't know if I would recommend leaving that in there. And then if you look at the bullet points on page 3, appropriateness is a term that's just caused quite a few issues in the case law that I've reviewed. And so maybe we could adjust the language there instead of saying appropriateness, maybe pull more precise library science defined term or just use harmful to minors. Just type it up so that way appropriateness is understanding. This is the bullet points. The last one. Sorry,
Appropriateness. So maybe you can change that or change that to library scientific wording or harmful minors.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Was this, the one you're working on right now, was it in the new board packet?
It's
I thought so too, but I can't.
it's the amended draft, I think, the direct.
So it's not the same as the 9/21/23.
Yes, you Yeah, what's coming in the mail?
Oh, found it. Sorry, thank you.
I think there's just two more concerns that I had. One is how the material selection policy relates to the withdrawal policy. So on the withdrawal policy, it references the material selection policy by stating that if an item doesn't meet the guidelines set forth in this policy, so that there will need to be a reference to what policy you're referring to in the reconsideration policy.
Where's that at?
Where is that?
That's the withdrawal policy, but since we're taking materials out of withdrawal, we have to refer to probably the amended policy in that one. So it's on the second page, very top line of the withdrawal policy. And then.
Excuse me.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, it, on the second page is under, where is it under the withdrawal policy that you just referred to? I'm sorry.
Maybe the first line.
On page 2 of the reconsideration of material?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is the very first line.
It's trustee. As it relates between the policies again, I'm sorry if I'm jumping back between them, but I'm trying to probably just do one at a time. The materials inappropriate for minors is a new term versus materials harmful to minors. And then this mentions, this is the withdrawal policy. It mentions Idaho code in stating that materials that violate that shall be removed from the juvenile and young adult sections. And so we have a separate defined term in the materials selection policy related to harmful to minors. And then if there is a state statute prohibition on harmful to minors or obscenity towards minors, it shouldn't just be removed from the juvenile or young adult section. It just should not be available to minors at all. Right, so that may need to be tweaked to where we're not just moving it from 2 sections now that we have 3. Right, so we'll have 3 as of now that we did it before when we drafted this policy.
Chair.
Council, are you, it feels to me like the term inappropriate isn't strong enough either to withdraw books. That is the, yeah. Harmful or the other term you used, forget. What's that? Obscene for minor or to minors or for minors. Inappropriate just isn't as strong as those 2 words. Isn't that correct?
Well, what we want to see from a legal perspective is a workable concept. And so if it's too broad, it has no meaning. And so the court struggled with that in the First Amendment context to lay down a framework without creating bright line rules because of the contextual analysis that's required. And so this is simply one of consistency, a concern of consistency. So if we're going to define in the material selection policy, harmful to minors, meaning certain things, I would like to see a consistent definition as it relates to the analysis of removal.
Sure.
Right, and that's why I'm saying inappropriate seems like it's not very.
Okay, just to clarify,
It's how you work.
council, we have two definitions, one for selection, which is actually more restrictive because of Llano County case. I don't think we want the same definition. Materials inappropriate for minors on withdrawal policy is the definition. Materials that violate Idaho codes. And then in addition, it was added, they can't be in juvenile or young adult collections. So these are just, it doesn't matter if they're written for minors or if they were bought, written for minors or whatever. If they violate those codes, they can't be in the minor section. That's all that's saying. And we're not trying to change any definitions. We're just saying, go by the Idaho code. So I think it's broader. So we're not removing the books from the library. We're just saying, saying that they can't be in the minor section.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we want the same definitions. We absolutely don't want the same definition because it's two different things. One is what we're buying for books.
I wasn't clear on that as it regards to the reference related to the guidelines set forth in this policy. So that would help clarify that for me. Since these were split, that sentence previously referred to the material selection as well. There were Senate policies in there. And so if we are looking at the withdrawal and reconsideration alone, then the guidelines set forth in this policy would refer just to the first page then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the subsection, okay then.
Yeah, and so if you look at sorry, Chair, were you?
Oh, so that section's okay.
Yeah, so the disposition of materials then has materials inappropriate for minors. So then that refers, I'm assuming, to the sentence notwithstanding Idaho Code 1815-17D, materials that violate Idaho codes 1815-13, 1815-14, and 1815-15 shall be removed from the juvenile and young adult collections. Correct?
Trustee Blank.
In your opening remarks and, having us look at this case, which I haven't had time to do it, but you talked very clearly about needing to include again and looking at the work as a whole. But that language has been taken out of this material selection policy. It just says now, when the material or performance has any of the following characteristics. That doesn't take it as a whole at all. And it would seem to me that would make this a high legal risk for us. That is under definitions as used in this policy. That was taken out.
Sure.
Okay, so whenever we're discussing, actually, since we kind of work with both policies at the same time, let's make sure that we refer to the policy and the page number of the section, because that way everyone's not still struggling.
I'm talking about the material selection policy, page 1, definitions as used in this policy.
I see that now, thank you. Plus.
So that was taken, those words were taken out because this is the selection and we have a wider range, more, anyway, libraries are given wider, definitions on what they can for selection than what they are. So we don't want anything that has this material that we're going to buy. Once we bring it into the library, then the Idaho code actually says taken as a whole. So we can't withdraw it when taken as a whole with the withdrawal, because that's in the Idaho code. But I don't see any reason we can't just have those words gone for what we buy. And it's not, and we have wide discretion is what Llano County case said for purchase.
Trustee Link? Sorry, first.
I would just point out that I would prefer the staff not to essentially have to conduct the Miller test or a revision of the Miller test in order to evaluate what we purchase. Is that we give much more clear instruction in the sample that I provided rather than this.
Like,
I would like to ask our attorney if libraries actually do have a wider range. Now, it's much more difficult to prove, but a librarian could say, I don't like this word in this book, so I'm not buying it. Now, that's difficult to prove, and that's probably why, but we don't really have a wider range. You can't choose a book that it has a, how is that going to be implemented to choose a book on a single half sentence that people don't like? I mean, we cannot allow that to be even something that's available in an implementation plan. I mean, I guess I think one of the reasons why the case law is stronger for taking, looking at clearly what's on the shelf to be taken off than it is in what you're intending to buy. But I think that the criteria are the same. I guess I would like some clarification from our attorney on.
Yeah, I don't think the director and library staff evaluate each and every book, and I don't think they look at certain words. I think they generally rely on a trusted recommendation, a trusted source of vendor, professional reviews, library journals, etc. But there is another case on point that is out of the Texas Reader Law Challenge, and this is 23 U.S. District Lexus 165010. And essentially what Texas did is they tried to pass a law that would allow the Texas State Library and Archives to create standards for sexually explicit or sexually relevant materials. And so I think this answers your question, Trustee Blank. The case says on page 3, the vendor must perform a contextual analysis to determine if a book is patently offensive and must consider for each of thousands of books multiple factors, including 1, the explicitness or graphic nature of a description or depiction of sexual conduct contained in the material. 2, whether the material consists predominantly of or contains multiple repetitions of depictions of sexual or excretory organs or activities. And 3, whether a reasonable person would find that material intentionally panders to, titillates, or shocks the reader. And the code asks more, though the court says it requires vendors to weigh and balance each factor and conclude whether the library material is patently offensive, recognizing that because each instance of a description, depiction, or portrayal of sexual conduct contained in a material may present a unique mix of factors. And then the law was held by the court's initial analysis to exacerbate the confusion in applying the balancing test by requiring vendors to consider the full context in which the description, depiction, or portrayal of sexual conduct appears to the extent possible, recognizing that contextual determinations are necessarily highly fact-specific and require the consideration of contextual characteristics that may exacerbate or mitigate the offensiveness of the material. And then let's see which court it is so I don't misspeak. The United States District Court for the Western District of Texas then states, notably, this definition of sexually explicit material does not follow the definition of obscenity approved by the Supreme Court in Miller versus California. Because of this, there is the potential that the designation of a book as sexually explicit would violate the First Amendment. And so here's another district court that's looking at a selection policy that's relying on the Miller test, which is a 3-part test, whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest, whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law, and whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And that analysis then is further defined by the staff for each age group when they're determining what to select in that section, but it does not prohibit access. So that's where that context comes from, Trustee Blaine.
Trustee Henley?
The board does not work for the vendors. The vendors have failed the libraries across the country. And so I don't want to depend on some vendor review, because you can look at even at movies and TV shows, and they may be rated a certain way now, and that's not the way that they would have been rated much more strongly, more adult themed many years ago. And so these are very woke organizations. They're trying to destroy children. And I think that we answer to the voters. Voters put us in here. We don't answer to the vending companies. And we can't just pawn it off if somebody doesn't like a book and say, well, I'm sorry, the vending company said this one's acceptable. So we need to make our own standards. I don't really give a damn what the vendors think about things.
All right, so we could be all over the place and get nowhere. I think what we should do is consider the attorney's suggested areas that we work on in order. So we would start with the material selection policy on page 1 under objective and scope of policy. You had mentioned regardless if previously acquired. You have suggested something else that would be under objective and scope of policy on page 1 of material selection policy. The first line, or at the end of the first line, it says regardless if previously acquired.
Yeah, I don't think the selection method in practice fits into this phrase, because the director may repurchase or renew. And so, if we have a classic, which could have been here for 50 years, and so that was previously acquired, then this sentence would create a duty for the director then to essentially reselect something that we had. And the flip side of that is that this analysis for selection is tied into the crew method, the crew way they're applying it. And so that's going to create an implementation issue that I think needs to be a little bit more precise, so that way the director understands what do you mean specifically by a selection, right? Because I think they can make a selection when it was previously acquired. Is that correct?
Sure.
Who's first? Trustee Hammond or Trustee Claus? Sorry.
So that phrase was put in specifically so that if a material was previously purchased, but it does not meet this definition, it violates this definition, it can't be bought again. So I think it's really clear. I would like to leave it that way. I don't understand why it has to do with crew method, which is for removal. This is for buying new books.
Sure. So for me, remove regardless of previously acquired is unclear. If a material was previously in our system, librarians refer to purchasing additional copies due to demand or a replacement copy when a material is lost, damaged, or stolen. A librarian bases whether it's a new item, which is a selection decision, on whether we hold the cataloging record already in the system or if it's a replacement or an addition. Librarians would hold that it should meet the withdrawal criteria, not the selection criteria, which, as we've kind of discussed, is either at the same level or higher. So once libraries make information available, courts have found that removal of that material must meet the First Amendment doctrinal test, because that removal would constitute abridgment and violate negative First Amendment rights.
So is this strictly regarding replacing a book that we currently have in the collection? If that's okay with the director mentioning that. Is that,
No.
is that what we mean by that, regardless of it previously acquired? Meaning we just can't buy more of those, or we can't replace one that's already, let's say, fell apart or got lost? Is that all we're defending by keeping that in there? Is that just simply saying we're not gonna buy a book that we already had or have?
That violates this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's
Point
the
of order.
case. Okay.
If I have to go in order, so does everyone else.
I didn't see your hand, sorry.
I didn't say your hand.
It was the other trustee.
Yes,
So,
it was
Okay, you're
back
right.
and forth
Sorry.
between the
Okay,
three of them.
point of order, well taken, you're right.
Chair.
Trustee Robinson?
Honestly, I believe that all of this should be in one policy, first off. I've said it before. I believe what, is happening in these two separate policies is that if a book is, taken out of the library, stolen out of the library, because it didn't meet the criteria of the, weeding or the, reconsideration. So somebody just decides to steal it from the library because they are thinking now they won't be able to rebuy it because it won't fit the new selection policy. That's how I read this. And I think it's a mistake to have these separate policies that are not compatible with each other. And I believe that that's why it's written this way.
Okay, well, there's always gonna be what if, and that would be unfortunate because, stealing is immoral and illegal. But you can't base every. You can't be.
Sure.
Anyway,
So you don't have to check it out. You can keep it in a rare books collection if you really want to preserve it. No one's telling you you can make it available. Gonzaga University, fourth floor where my daughter used to work is rare books. They don't have 1,400 or books written in 1,400 that are checked out. People have to come and look at them. So you can do that if you want. We're not saying you can't. I would like to call the question and vote on this policy as is.
So I don't believe that you have the legals of their law, and so I believe you are. Okay, the question has been called, you have to vote. So you figured it would be a mistake at this point. So anyway, so first we vote on the question. Those in favor of calling the question?
I would like this to be a roll call vote, please.
I need to understand, all right. Make sure you understand what is, be asking for, go ahead and just approve the whole policy as is right now, is that?
Yes. But first we have to vote on whether we're going to stop debate and vote. So that's what the point of the question is. So all those in favor of stopping debate and voting on the original question of improving the material selection policy, say aye.
Aye.
No, I asked for a roll call.
Oh, yes, that's right. You did.
Aye.
Trustee Collis is an aye. Trustee
Nay.
Absolutely.
Not yet, no.
also no. Yeah. All right, so then we. Trustee Blank?
I would like to reiterate what was just said by the director. This has not been approved, supported by our legal counsel, who is also a risk manager, and who has pointed out to us by the case that he gave us, that this policy carries a lot of legal risk for us. He's also suggested that we take the time to look at the policy that was presented to us, and we are not doing that. And I looked at it very quickly and very briefly, and it may put together a policy that put these two together.
Point of order, the motion on the
I'm
floor
sorry.
is this policy. We're talking about this policy.
I'm talking about this policy and
We're talking about the other.
that you would not allow me to interrupt him ever.
Point of order does interrupt and chair rules on it. What was the point of order again?
That we're on the floor is to approve this motion, this policy, material selection policy. It's not to talk about the other policy that the library director brought.
To approve this policy. I can refer to other policies.
No.
I think your point of order is not well taken. We are discussing this, but we are discussing the one.
Because if we're going by the agenda, we're only discussing material selection policy right now. And we cannot go back and forth between material selection and withdrawal.
Okay, so yes, right now we are discussing the material selection.
Then I would like to
We're-
finish my comments, please.
No.
Do they have to do with the selection
Yes,
and
they
acquisition
do.
of books and materials?
Yes,
So
I think it's
previously-
absolutely reckless based upon what the attorney has said to us about the risk that we might incur by approving this policy today. And we don't have the money for that risk.
Okay, do you have a comment on the selection and acquisition of books and materials regardless of previously impaired? Because that's what we're discussing right now. Okay, all right, so, would legal counsel suggest wording that would be legally appropriate?
Oh,
I really don't know, sorry. You know, I don't consider myself a specialist when it comes to drafting a policy for a library. I look to the language that's presented to me and I perform a legal analysis on it. But if you're asking me to provide you a phrase, I would probably say that I want a phrase that can't be construed as conflating the selection and the removal. And so regardless if previously acquired could have a meaning associated with removal, and then that would be a different legal standard. So if we could tighten that language up to where it only applies to selection, then that would meet my legal hurdle.
I think that there are probably so few instances where we're purchasing books that were lost, destroyed, or buying more of them, that if that's a sticking point, there are very few things that were noted by legal counsel that were challenging in this policy. I'd rather not delay moving this along and say, okay, I'm happy to strike that. And we'll live with those handful of books that we ever buy and replace. So I will be okay with just striking that particular phrase out of the sentence. I think that again, it says, if it's a sticking point and that's enough to get a legal issue going over that, well then, I don't think there are probably that many books, I don't know that are purchased and replaced, and they're gonna violate, the definition here.
And it seems to me that it does say selection and acquisition. It is only referring to selection
yes.
and not removal.
Right.
Books.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would just add some clarity, because there's a question about volume. So probably 20% of the materials that we're purchasing are items that we had before that have been lost, damaged, or become very popular. So we've purchased more copies. And it is the part that, again, it's saying regardless of previously acquired. So if it's just again, we do not as librarians see selection and deselection the same way. And so for us, this is a material that we've already purchased. And so we would be looking at, if we don't repurchase it, then you're essentially telling us that it's a withdrawal.
Sure. This is very clear. Put your blinders on and look at this policy, and you're buying books. If it doesn't meet this requirement, doesn't meet this definition, you cannot buy it. And don't go over here and say, was it bought before? Oh, I can buy it then. No, if it does not meet it, it's about acquisition, selection, acquisition. If it doesn't meet it, regardless of the history in the library network, you cannot buy it. I insist, or I want to keep that in there. Because I don't want to buy any books that violate this definition.
Trustee Henley?
I agree. I'd like to leave it in there. I'm just saying if that was gonna stop us from getting this policy out, but I agree. I want that in there because if the book was not appropriate to start with and they wear out or whatever happens to them, I don't want to buy more. So, I'm happy to leave it in there. I'm just saying I would take it out if that was gonna stop us from passing this policy, but, I'm happy to leave it in there.
Trustee Mike?
I would just like to reiterate what another trustee pointed out, that allows anybody to take a book off the shelf that they don't care for, knowing that it won't be allowed to be, or possibly won't be allowed to be repurchased. I think that opens the library up wide open for, I think it's very risky to leave that in there because that's exactly what that does.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, hold on. Director?
I think what's difficult for me right now is, there's a couple definitions of context and council just gave us a definition of context. And I think an aspect that the board is not understanding is the library profession, library staff's work. And what I'm trying to convey, which doesn't seem to be heard, is that, and the problem is that you're creating two standards now, or trying to create two standards. And what I am saying to you is that if we have a book in the catalog, then librarians do not consider that a selection. We consider that we already had it, it met the standard, we're replacing it.
Sure.
I'm still, if it's not understood, I don't know how else to say that. What you're saying is that you have a higher standard to withdraw it than you do for purchasing it. But now you're basically circumventing the process, as was already stated. And so for librarians, that's not, creating two separate standards is very difficult.
Sure.
Trustee Foss?
The librarians are just gonna have to get used to it. It's really pretty simple. If we want to make sure that no books are bought that violate this definition, that's what this policy means. So that's it, and I want to vote on it.
Perhaps we come back to that particular phrase and we move on to the next phrase, which is no specific rules contemplated during the enactment of this policy. Mr. Robinson?
Okay, so we're coming back to this phrase and we're moving on. And this is all beside the point that council at the beginning told us that these two separate policies, in his opinion, aren't a good idea right now, and that we should give some time on the staff draft, is what I'll call it right now, whatever it's called. So we're skipping over the regardless of previously acquired. So what I can only assume is that this is going to go on next month's agenda, or next month's 3 to 5 special meetings. I say right now, we decide regardless of previously acquired stays or goes. Why are you skipping over it?
It just doesn't seem like there's agreement.
There's not, but that doesn't mean there's gonna be agreement next month.
Well, perhaps someone's subconscious would continue to work on it. That typically happens, and they would come up with the right phrase that fits the needs. Trustee Kelly.
I think there would be agreement. I'm not sure where the chair stands, but I obviously can tell that one trustee is strongly in support of leaving that in there. I am as well, and I'm happy to move on. I don't want to stop on that. It's done. As far as I'm concerned, we talked it out, unless someone has something more to say about it. And I think we should go to the next sticking point that was identified by legal counsel.
Okay, and I also agree, and so for now, we will leave it in there by consensus. Director?
I don't want to put legal counsel on the spot, but I will. If that phrase remains as it is written, would you approve that as meeting the requirements and the risk for the district? I think that's the real standard, not what you prefer or what you want, whether it's legal.
Consensus, yes.
Chair.
Yeah, I
Okay,
do.
recognize me.
So what I want to see is that we are not accidentally including a deselection framework in this selection policy, right? And so when I read it, and we can clarify it, great, but maybe the phrase needs to be, does not include deselection. But when I was researching how the librarians implement the policy and how we're using words in the policy, to me, the selection, deselection issue is not contemplated with this, regardless of previously acquired, right? Because then that would become to a librarian a deselection, which would then fall under the other policy. And so it may not be fatal to the draft, but it does create the opportunity for someone to implement the deselection in the selection policy. And I would like to foreclose that possibility in the policy and leave that to the reconsideration / withdrawal policy.
Okay, so we could have regardless if previously acquired and then in parentheses does not include deselection. I'm still not getting it.
Well, no, I think it would be more of this policy pertains only to the selection and acquisition of books and materials and does not include deselection, right? Selection only, not deselection, because previously acquired books are on the catalog. And if one is purchased again, that's not a new acquisition. It's not a new selection, right? They're just replenishing the materials that are in the library. But if they decide at that point, this book is no longer on the catalog, then that librarian has deselected that book. Does that make sense? And then if it's a 0 through 12 or 13 through 15 or an up to 18 or an adult, any one of those people who wanted to read that book could say, the library board deprived me of access to that information it had previously had. And then depending on the subject matter contained in the book, they could plausibly allege a complaint that would survive a motion to dismiss or a judgment on the pleadings and then be entitled to discovery. And we may win, right? But we have protracted litigation related to that. So if there's no room in the policy to argue that staff is deselecting books according to the selection policy, which you have broader discretion over, then we can foreclose that litigation possibility. All right, so I just want to be clear that deselection is not contained in the selection policy. And my reading of previously acquired doesn't foreclose deselection. It actually anticipates that it is a deselection.
Sure. I think it's vital that we leave the phrase regardless of previously acquired, but we could add that cannot be used to remove or remove existing books in the library. Just add a little more if you want to make it clear. But you can't, we are not going to use taxpayer money to buy those books again. It doesn't matter.
Audience, please.
It's the definition.
So, we also look at legal requirement.
What was the chair?
The suggested phrasing. Just
What was that?
It cannot be used as a method to remove books from library. Remove materials.
Yeah, you guys really put me on the spot today, aren't you?
That's the big one.
Okay. So we're selecting a book with this material selection policy. It prohibits anything that's harmful to minors. The harmful to the minors is defined as essentially mostly on page 2. Right? And this standard applies to the entire library? Or does this standard contemplate the library cards for minors that we have now implemented? Right? And so
That's separate.
right, but I'm trying to walk through if we're pertaining only to the selection and acquisition of books and materials, it's all books and materials, right? So is there a different acquisition process that the board is contemplating for or as relates to the library cards for minors? Or is that just a who can check out what issue?
Right. Where it gets put. That's fair. Yeah, to me, the minors card policy is just saying which bin or which silo these are going into. There can't be any books bought for the library whatsoever that violate the definition in here. So this is new purchases. And it's regardless of previously acquired, but cannot be used as a method to remove materials.
Sure. Actually, our time is up for both sections, and we didn't get very far with the discussion of material selection policy. So we will bypass, we will move these to the next meeting, and we will go to the annual board gift and break for 15 minutes. Are you gonna get a break? Yes, we're on break right now. All right, so we are back from the break, and we'll go to the director evaluation committee report. You're giving that, what's the plus or trusting it?
I don't have a prepared report on it as much as trustee Plus and myself met. Yeah, in this room here, about 2 weeks ago, we started reviewing the draft of the policy I had put together, and we made a number of corrections. The library director took notes on the changes we made. We didn't finish getting through the entire policy. We made fairly good progress. The one sticking point we got to was the current personnel manual versus the contract for the library director. So whether it's legal counsel is going to provide counsel to us, it doesn't have to be at this meeting for my purposes anyway, and decide which one we have to follow. But the library director is the only person that has a contract, and we only have one employee, meaning the board does, and so we're continuing on. So I'm expecting, absent some major change, that we'll schedule another meeting somewhere in January for the committee, myself and trustee Plus, to continue plotting through the policy and the forms that are associated with it.
Can I hand out some of the material to the rest of the board that we were working on? So, I mean, if we're going to continue with the policy, so.
So we did get through part of policy. There were just a couple of simple changes that were made for that. So I guess we'll start back at the beginning and address just the changes that were made, not by the board, but the changes that were made at the committee meeting. So the first one is in very first sentence, the word board. Said that that should be a small b. So do we have consensus on that?
No.
Okay, Kristen.
Can I ask why no? Why the trustees saying no? Maybe it's supposed to be a capital?
I think it's traditionally capitalized in all of our other policies. I think I'd like to be consistent and in policy that and it seemed to be diminishing.
So, trustee Henley, you said yes, Bernie was a no, Robinson.
Whoever wanted to change it, did they look it up and find that it should be changed? Or was it just, you know, like, hey, maybe that's supposed to be lowercase?
Okay. Sure.
I just wanted to be correct.
Okay, trustee Plus.
So I passed out one of many things I found, capitalizing, and I put it in yellow highlight for you. This is basic grammar our kids in fourth grade, fifth grade had to deal with, but capitalized titles of honor or rank, government, military, ecclesiastical, royal, or professional when they precede a name. When the titles do not precede a name, they are not capitalized. So there's examples there. President, capitalized, George Washington, the president, it's not capitalized. The king is not capitalized.
This is an entity, the board is an entity, it's not a person.
If it's not,
It's not, your point of order is not taken, because the point of order is for when, rules have been violated.
Well,
That wasn't-
sorry.
So it was a comment, but it wasn't.
Okay, sorry.
so any of these, if it doesn't have a formal name, if it's the board of the CLN board, then it would be capitalized. If it doesn't have a name, it isn't capitalized.
Okay, I'm good with changing it to a small b. Consensus on that one.
Point of order, if someone votes no, it's not consensus.
Yeah, actually, there's a section in Robert's rules that talks about the tyranny of the minority and not having to have, the old fashioned at his time, which I think he lived in the 1800s. But prior to that, or that he knew things that were changing and that consensus, according to Robert's Rules of Order, does not mean 100% agreement.
I would certainly appreciate
Director?
a quote. I mean, I would like to know where that came from Robert's Rules of Order. It doesn't have to be right now.
I'll try to look it up later. Right, Director?
I would just recommend, the board of trustees is not mentioned before that. That's the first sentence of it. So maybe that first mention could be board of trustees, and then you can refer to it after that as either board or trustees.
I'm good with that. Yep. Okay, so looks like we have consensus on just board of trustees. Lowercase, we already decided that.
The board, it is usually capitalized, it's usually. And then if you refer to it after, it could be small, medium, small.
Okay, SLVII is the code and Robert's Rules of Order for that section.
Sure.
Right, just class.
The reason I passed that out is also sprinkled throughout. Library director is capitalized, and it isn't without giving the name. And we talked about it at the committee, but we didn't, it's a group of two, you can't have consensus. So as far as I'm concerned, that's still to be decided, but director, library director, it's a position and you don't do it unless there's a name behind it. So I still say all of those library director and director should be lowercase.
Okay, well, we did have consensus and you probably shouldn't spend all day on something that we've already agreed to. So the next section is, or the next one was appraisal, but we did have consensus on that on 11:30. The next one after that, in yellow, is under the heading process, may submit. We have general agreement on that.
Where are you?
Just says, so we're on the first page, under the title or the heading process. The first sentence, it says director may submit, and may submit is the change. Are we agreeing to that?
What was it before?
I think it was submits.
Oh.
Sure.
Yes.
I thought I had noticed that he, if so chooses or something, but is that the wording that we're talking about, man?
Does director may submit accomplishments and
Yeah, that came from the committee, I think.
Yeah.
So what
Right.
you've got is mixed between the board, but what the committee did was not. What the committee did was not board approved. That was
That was a recommendation from the committee to the board.
right.
Yeah, so we're just gonna go to the part where we had stopped and approved changes since the last time that we had consensus on those. So do we have consensus on may submit?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we have consensus on that. All right, the next one, the next highlight was something that we already agreed to on 11:30. And so that would be striking out performance input and striking out the voluntary adjustment that is. We also had consensus on 11:30. All right, so now we will go to the next line. It is suggested that I'm guessing that's supposed to be a small b.
Mhm.
Okay.
There's a line here, but you can see.
Oh, okay, because it's part of the b. All right. Trustees individually complete an evaluation form prior to the executive session board meeting. Do we agree to that sentence? Are there improvements?
Sure.
Okay, so
Yes,
that,
Yeah.
I don't know what it used to be, so.
well, this part we didn't get to, so we haven't agreed on any of the wording after this.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was just the parts that were in yellow that were changed. Trust plus.
So I have notes from our committee meeting. Well, first of all, executive session, I don't think should be capitalized, but adding to the end of that sentence, using the director input and form to complete a single eval form. So we added to that sentence.
So that's that's the word, we're not to that part yet. We're in
Oh,
the,
you broke it into two sentences. Okay.
it was always. Okay, so we have two people who are fine with that. I guess I'm fine with that sentence too, so that makes consensus. So we'll move on to the next section, which does say the board meets in executive session without the library director to file a single evaluation form using the director's input. That part doesn't make sense to me. It seems like it should be using the board's input. Am I not understanding something? Trustee Hennon?
Maybe, and then maybe also using library, maybe directors. Well,
Just including? Or
I lost my place. There's, they're both. So the board needs an executive session without the library director. Compile a single evaluation form. I believe that is correct. Giving consideration for the director's input, something of that nature. I mean, we're not doing the evaluation strictly based on the director's input, but we are going to simulate that and take that into consideration.
Okay, trustee Claus.
So this was using not just director's input, but all of the trustees' input. I was suggesting that we fill it out before we come in. So I would like this to say a single evaluation form using the all trustees input, all trustees and the director's input.
Sorry, trustee Robin. I should look up before I start writing.
Oh, that's fine. My issue is it all going into a single evaluation form. I don't know how that would happen. If we all filled out our own things and then there's one form, do we just, like under number 1, do we put 5
Yes.
points? Or do we try to, or do we try to like, oh, sorry. Or do we try to like come to like the middle of all 5 and put that sentence down?
Well, when we did this before for our previous director, I don't recall her evaluation being part of going into the one single thing, but I do remember that there being a single one that we compiled different comments that kind of got the flavor of everyone's feelings.
Okay.
And then, class.
So maybe that's not clear, that using the director's input didn't mean we write what the trustee or what the director, we didn't include her comments, but we considered, maybe it should say, and consider the director's input. I don't think it should be trustees' comments or combined comments or something, but the director's input should be considered. Because maybe there's things in there we don't know anything about that she did.
Okay, so trustee Finley, you did evaluation type thing for a long time. Is that the normal way of doing things?
Normally the person that's being evaluated provides input to their boss or boss's plural. And when it comes to this performance evaluation, because it's coming from 5 persons, it still needs to be whittled down so that it's one evaluation, because the board speaks as a whole, as a unit. And so it will probably be painful. It's not easy to do a performance evaluation and from scratch for one person to do it, to take 5 people's input and then consolidate that into a unified voice is a challenge. It will be. But yes, I definitely, if you're asking me, do we include the director's input? Yes, that should be taken into consideration. We don't have to use a single word of it, or we can use all of it if it's appropriate. So that answers your question.
Okay, trustee Blake.
Just to recall what we did before, we didn't put together, we voted on, we came to a conclusion on it was a rating system as a whole, but we included in the evaluation, everybody, the single evaluations, people and their individual comments. So I'm just saying that those individual comments were kept as part of the evaluation as well.
So might we say, instead of using the director's input, considering trustees and director's input? Is that acceptable? Trustee Fox?
Well, I think the consider should only be for the director's input, but I see no reason why we have to craft a single sentence between the 5 of us. I don't know why we can't just have our comments listed there. And I think that is perfectly acceptable. So I would say single form using all trustee inputs and consider, well, using all trustee inputs with consideration of the director's inputs.
Stanley?
Still think it's gonna be incredibly confusing for the recipient of the evaluation. What does the board think? She's great, she stinks, so you got, and there's your number. Well, what's the answer? I mean, I think we, everything the board does is done, an end product is the board's product, and you can be sure, I'm certain that certain items on the evaluation, there are gonna be a lot of differing responses or inputs from the different people, trustees. And so I would find this as a recipient of that evaluation to be incredibly confusing. So I think it needs to be the board's evaluation of the director, not mine and yours and this person and yours. It has to be one voice, I think. So that's not experience from being on a board. I've never been on a board, but as a board now, I'm not evaluating the director. We are, the board is, and I think it needs one unified answer. That's my opinion.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, well, who's first? Plus.
So I passed out this form. I didn't have enough copies for everybody, but it was a suggested form, and there's one, and it came from Hewlett Packard from my evaluations, and page 8 is performance summary. I absolutely think this rating has to be decided uniformly or as in unison from the board, and any summary comments, that's where we speak in unison. But these other 7 sections they're basically, you just check unacceptable or acceptable. And it's a trustee's chance to put in comments. And I think absolutely those comments should go in. And we shouldn't have to spend time crafting 7 sections of comments. Just do it once in the overall. That's my suggestion.
Really encourage the board to have another committee meeting and bring back a more complete recommendation. That form was presented at the committee meeting, but there had not been any agreement or discussion of it. We were still working on this. And so, again, I think it's probably more helpful for the whole board if the committee meets again and goes through and makes a recommendation or a proposal. So it's a little awkward that not everybody got a copy of that. And again, it wasn't the recommendation of the committee. You're kind of going around in that fashion. So again, I think the committee work is important. And that's what needs to be focused on.
Sure.
Trustee Boss.
So the reason is it fits in with that sentence. What are we supposed to do? And that's why I was just using it as an example that the committee met, and it's basically Trustee Hanley and myself. So we can't.
And the director.
The director's not on the committee. The director's there as the secretary. And the director is not a member of the committee.
The director attends every meeting.
The director can attend, but the director is not on the committee to make the recommendations. You can end up swaying and get 2 against 1. And that's not what the committee is. The committee, if the 2 of us can't agree, we need to bring it back to the board that these are the 2 options.
I think it's a grave error to not listen to staff input, and I'm hearing that over and over and over throughout this meeting. Trustee Hanley.
I agree with the director with regard to us, the committee going back and meeting again. I think that we're not going to solve this as a group here, and we should be presenting our more or less proposed draft and not hash it out completely at the board here. And I do think I tend to agree with Trustee Plas with regard the director. We solicited knowingly, I did, input and questions occasionally as we went through the policy formation or editing. But she is not a member, to my knowledge, of the committee meeting. She's not an active participant. She's not on the committee. She is the secretary for the committee. And I even asked Trustee blank one or two questions and asked for input because she was in the audience. So, I think that we're not gonna finish this out in this meeting here, and I think that that's what the committee was, assigned. I think we should press on as a committee.
Okay, and perhaps we could just finish out our time here at least and decide that, yes, trustee Glass.
So before we go on, legal counsel, I asked for last week, but we came to loggerheads on this because Trustee Hanley and I went into this believing the library director is our employee and she's governed by her contract. And the library director presented us that, you know, she's governed by the personnel policy, and the personnel policy, it looks like from the contract, wouldn't take effect until the contract terminates. Then it's so do we even need to be doing, legal counsel, can you work on this? Maybe not necessarily today, but should we even be doing an evaluation policy if the library director is governed by the personnel policy? I see nothing in the contract that says that. And we have to have a way to evaluate her, and that's what we're trying to do here. Maybe you can speak to that before we, or if you're not prepared, it is a open question.
Or you can get back to us when he's got an answer.
Yeah, so the question is, one, does the library personnel policies apply to the director? And two, whether or not they do, regardless, should you do an evaluation of the director?
A separate policy.
Basically, if the library personnel policy governs, then they have a policy evaluation, they have means of dealing with poor performers, and they have all that in there. But I understood it did not apply until the director's contract ended. And it says there very clearly, if it's not renewed, then the personnel policy, she's a for cause employee and operates under the personnel policy. So is she also operating under the personnel policy at the same time as the contract?
Okay, I can get you an answer to that.
Okay.
I think I have it in front of me, but I will get you an official answer.
Okay, so then I have a question, trustee Blake.
Does the contract refer to the personnel policy?
Yes.
Okay, I would assume that that's what I recall, is that it says that in the contract that she will be, that the personnel policy will apply to her as well.
And I would just clarify that part of the discussion was about performance improvement plans, behavior modification, evaluations, disciplinary, oral warning, verbal warning. It was about specifically questions about disciplinary and whether that applied.
Want us to go on? Like, are you still?
I mean, I can answer it, but I would prefer to have one comprehensive answer I can email to everyone.
All right, so do we then have consensus on adding or replacing using the director's input with using trustee inputs and considering the director's input?
Yeah.
Okay, trustee Lenny.
I abstain.
Yes. Okay, I am also a yes, so we do have consensus on that. So the next section is if board is unable to achieve 2/3 majority for an executive session, board chairman uses individual trustee performance evaluation input to produce a single completed evaluation form. I think that should say, instead of for an executive session, it should say to go into executive session. Does that make better sense?
To enter into.
Yes, okay. else before we move on to the next section? Seeing none, board chair submits completed performance evaluation to, strike through board, legal counsel for review. So we have agreement on replacing the word board with legal counsel.
Sure.
Yes, trustee Foss.
So at the end of the previous sentence, we didn't get what my notes were. There was questions about whether the board chairman is the one to do this or whether legal counsel, or who would do this if we can't enter into executive session.
Since the board chairman.
Or
Since the board chairman.
right, but we had circled this, or I had circled this because it was discussed in our committee meeting whether the board chairman is really the one to do this. Who's neutral that would compile it?
Oh,
It's not circled in our version that was mailed out.
Well, that was her version of what we talked about.
There was also a question about whether or not we should have the 2/3 majority and the not going into executive session, even in the policy, because again, it's assuming something that has never happened. And this is our general policy. So my recommendation to the committee was to not have that in the policy.
Oh, I absolutely think it should be in there because it has happened where we had people vote against going into executive session and then trashing people in public, which I should have stopped that. I didn't know enough about being chair. Anyway, I think it's really necessary. Just like.
We have never in the history of this library board not gone into executive session for for an evaluation. This is absolutely something we've always gone into. It would be something that I would always vote yes to do. I have voted no in the past for not going into an executive session when it was not, there was not, as in my opinion, a good enough reason to. But I think that, I don't even think it needs to be in there because we do evaluations of the director in executive session. We just do.
Trustee Henley?
It's never happened before, but it could happen. I see no threat with leaving it in there. It's nice to have a backup plan.
Okay, and actually our time is up for this section. And get that, or I guess at least we get somewhere. Alright, so the next thing is session of 2024 board calendar and policy schedule.
If the board is agreeable, I'd recommend that we discuss that next one. I can prepare for information on not knowing exactly what direction the board's going to go with which policy. Remember, council mentioned that there's a pond and ripples, and so I'm still compiling the list of policies based on whichever policy the board adopts.
Okay, so you would like to postpone the
If we could
discussion on
postpone that,
calendar?
and if the board's agreeable.
Are you guys agreeable?
Sure.
Trustee Plus?
So from my point of view, we need to finish up these policies we're working on. And the next one is obviously the minor card because it's so entwined. I think we should do the low hanging fruit, the things we know should get on the calendar instead of just, well, I guess if you're going to prepare it, that would be my vote, is those policies get on your calendar.
Generally, I was putting things in order if it's required in statute for us to have a policy done by a certain date. We have a couple of those coming up, the Children's Internet Protection and so there's a couple of things that are probably a little higher priority based on statute. But I am preparing that for discussion.
Okay, so we are postponing them. That was consensus on that. Yes, okay. The next thing is discussion of personnel policy manual, section 5.3.6 holidays. We have been advised by legal counsel to postpone that as well. We have consensus to postpone that.
Yes.
Treasurer?
I just would comment before we postpone it, if possible, that remind the board that the McGrath company provided a compensation and benefit study report, and it did address holiday eligibility. And so if the board is seriously considering the holiday policy, I'd recommend that you consider time benefited employees receiving a prorated benefit. So if we can make that part of the discussion the next time.
Sure.
Actually, trust Hammond.
I just thought that it would be handled no differently than any other holiday. I mean, taking one out and adding one in. I would think that whoever's benefiting or not benefiting from one holiday it would be the same situation for any changes made to it. But
So I'm just looking at this draft and it just says that full-time need to get 8 hours of holiday pay on observed holidays. So I don't really, it seems like it has more to do with vacation time. And I don't understand why we're putting this off because all we're doing is returning the day after Thanksgiving that everybody wants. I don't know why we can't just do that.
Sure. Well, council is the one that that recommended, right, to put this off. So we can either have him answer right now of why he did it, or we can just take his suggestion. And I am curious, so council, when did you get this actual printout of the personnel policy manual with the strikeouts and stuff? Did you get that just recently or did?
I just passed that out today.
Oh, to council?
Just because I was sick.
So that was like,
I had hoped actually to get it out with the packet and I apologize for not.
okay. Well, I would recommend us listening to council on this and it wouldn't be that big of a deal to put it off a little bit.
Yeah, I think it should be postponed. We have 2, 3, okay, we have consensus postponed.
So just to clarify, I wanted to talk about holiday eligibility for staff. The recommendation of this consulting firm was that we begin paying staff for holidays, staff on a daily basis. So that's what
Point of order, we're actually done with that. Okay, so we're going to discussion on the update of job descriptions. I was wondering, are those job descriptions that are needed to be filled immediately or?
my hope is that we can approve them today. I did include a memo that outlines the position. I can do it in production if you like. Sure. The McGrath Human Resources Group did the compensation study. Appendix A, page 26, listed recommended changes. And so this is staff beginning to work through the implementation of the recommendations from the study. So the recommendation would be specialist 1, specialist 2, specialist 3. The current structure is listed in the blue and peach graph. The column on the left side is the current job titles, and the column in the middle is what McGrath recommended. It essentially streamlines our job description. So everybody's pay would remain the same, everybody's benefits would remain the same, but it allows us to be more efficient with fewer job descriptions. Because right now we have emerging tech outreach specialists, we have youth service specialists, so we have all these different specialists, and so now there will be a library specialist 1, 2, and 3. The other recommendation was that we move from emerging technologies librarian to a more general librarian job description. I
I kind of like the descriptive, job titles better, but it's whatever works for the library.
So we will still post like post falls and youth services, but this will be their job description.
Trustee Mike?
It sounds like what these job descriptions would do would be allow the director or staff more flexibility. Is that correct? In moving people, if something changes within the library, you don't have this person as an emergent technology position, and then you can't really use them for something else. Is that a little bit why this looks, I think this makes it more flexible. Is that correct?
It's definitely more in line with the National Library Standard.
Okay.
And so it is more in keeping with what, if we post a job, they understand what a librarian is. They may not understand what this librarian and that librarian. So it's definitely, I would characterize it as more professional and more modern. And it does offer some flexibility, you're right.
Stanley?
In the past, did we create a new position for emerging technology? Meaning, is that a specially created position for that specific job? And if so, it would be up to the board to decide whether we want to even keep emerging technology. And so I'm just wondering, are we taking a job that was created for emerging technology, and then we're going to label that now something more generic, which we can never get rid of because it's so broad in description that if we took away emerging technology function in the library, well, we have nobody associated directly with that particular function in the library. Because I question, to be honest with you, I don't even know why we do emerging technology. Why don't we have a special person that teaches history or somebody specialized in geography? And so I can't really say I fully understand why we have a robot, why we have 3D printers, and a person to, I'm assuming that's what they're for, to manage emerging technologies. There are a lot of other disciplines out there in the world. And so I'm concerned that if this position was created in the past to address that particular initiative, that we're now going to recode it and give it a new name. And whether we get rid of emerging technology or not, we still have another staff member on board. But that's a concern I have on this.
The Emerging Technologies Librarian was essentially the manager of the Discovery Bus. It's currently vacant because of an internal promotion.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Sorry, who's next? Trustee Mike?
What do I want to say? Emerging technology is not exactly like history. The library provides people with access to information and ideas. A tremendous amount of information and ideas are provided to people now through technology. And to teach people how to become digitally literate is what, I mean, that it's about teaching people to read. In other words, technically, I don't mean read the technical manuals. I mean, it's about teaching people how to use materials. So that is it. But my understanding too is that actually has broadened to cover the entire library. And so we would look differently at, emergent technologies.
Trustee Bloss?
So my initial reaction in looking at this afternoon or earlier was no changes till next budget. But you're saying in here, pay remains the same for all staff. I'm concerned that we're fitting in positions that aren't there now. I don't know whether we have openings for everything. If there is something, I'm concerned how it's going to affect the budget. And I think we need to understand before anybody's hired, whether we're adding somebody new by doing this. This is a little confusing to me. So my reaction is let's put this off until we understand it.
comment that, I think it was trustee Hanley who said before that, let's hire people well, but maybe streamline, not fire anyone, but, as positions become available, just maybe not fill them. And I thought that was an excellent idea. Terms next.
So this does not create any new positions. New positions go through the budget process. So this is within the current approved budget. This does not have a financial impact. So I think those are key points. I can, if you want next meeting, but like I said, I was really hoping that we could move forward. We have quite a few job descriptions to bring to the board, and we are looking for some consistency and making some updates in this as well. One of the items was the education. The other thing is putting right in the job description that they must pass a criminal background check prior to screening. So there was some out of date aspects to our job description. So when I characterize it as being more professional, it's more in keeping with other best practices in this field. Again, no financial impact, no new positions. New positions if you don't have the positions can be reclassified, staff can be moved from one location to another location. And I'm just gonna, as a very big thing, say that we do have appropriate specialists. Well, specialists or specialist twos, they can move to another location, maybe not the average department, maybe a paid spots location, same classification. So to trustee Blake's comment, it can provide us additional flexibility. But the main thing is efficiency, improving, because they require board approval, become a what we've inherited. And all of this has been stated to the board compensation study. So this isn't us or doing something. This is further steps in the implementation process. Because this didn't involve the budget, it wasn't necessary to discuss during the budget season, if you would. Trustee Allen?
I'm not questioning necessarily whether it's a budget item or not, directly, meaning it's already a budgeted position that exists. And I'm assuming that the emerging technology, whatever they call the lead or whatever it is, that person moved up to a library manager position. I believe the position may be vacant. And if the position was there to run emerging technologies, I kind of question that whole discipline, that specialty. So we're retaining a position that's now vacant that was created initially to address emerging technology. That wasn't just a 3D printer issue. It wasn't just a robot thing or just the technology training. We have a big bus that we don't drive all winter long now. We may not fix, in fact, we probably should get rid of it. It's a giant, expense. And it has, it's just basically a giant bus that's got counters on it that we can use as an outreach tool, just like we can for the bus or the Sprinter vans. But I think we're trying to retain a position that was created to address a specific thing. And I'm not real anxious to approve this at this time because, and I wouldn't even mind getting all the position descriptions for the library. I've never gotten that. And I know that is one of our duties. The board is responsible for position descriptions. And so I don't even know how many there are because I've never seen them. This is the first time I've got, other than the directors, an actual, I think, position description. So I'm questioning whether or not we really even need to keep the position. So.
Sure. So last meeting I mentioned that with so much workload being put on our collection department, that my recommendation was to fill the position as a collection development librarian. As an emerging technologies are in that department, it would be posted in technical services assisting with collection and selection. It is still the same professional responsibility, so it would be someone with a master's degree, but the work would be going towards additional attention towards collection and technical services. Trustee Mike.
On this memo that we received, under this particular job description, it says the structure so this job description doesn't just apply to the emergency, it isn't just replacing emergent technology. It would then become applicable to collection development librarian, outreach librarian, team librarian. It is making it much more flexible to hire someone with this job description. That's what we're doing, is we're making it flexible so that however this is filled, it is filled to fill the library's needs at the moment.
That's accurate, and that is in the memo too, under librarian in writing.
Yeah.
Trustee Lance.
So I'm not opposed to approving it if it doesn't affect our budget. I don't want to increase headcount, and if I assume we're low right now, there's vacancies that are we trying to fill them? So you're just filling them with a better job description. So we're going to fill them anyway. Is that correct?
We are currently pausing on reposting several jobs in the hopes that this will be approved so that we can post it as a library specialist or a librarian. And then I am critically evaluating every position at this point. I am looking at opportunities to raise staff from 20 hours or 28 hours to 40 hours because, like I said, 75% of our staff is part-time, and it is creating a major issue with turnover. But that is still within the budget that we have. So I am cautiously posting positions, but I would love to post them with new job descriptions. Stanley.
I think it's an opportunity to decrease costs in the future. I don't think this is just, probably belongs as a specialty of its own or not, but we created a position probably to address emergent technology. And I'm assuming we're sort of going away from that as a specialty. That's just something expected of all staff or certain levels of staff. Well, now let's get rid of the position. It's empty. And so why keep it? It's an opportunity to save another $40,000 or $50,000, whatever it comes out to with benefits. And so to me, I prefer to get rid of the position altogether instead of renaming it. Okay.
I think in order to eliminate positions, we need to eliminate workload. And since this board has taken office, workload has. And so we can, I think it's important to note that we are a public library that serves over 100,000 people, and we do not have a single position with the title librarian. That's appalling. We need a job description of a professional librarian. So I think in that job description, we're doing ourselves a disservice by not adding it in. I think at some point the board needs to rely on the judgment of the administrative team for where the workload is and what work needs to be assigned. That's an operational decision. As long as I'm working within the budget that has been approved by the board, again, that is an operational decision. But in fairness, we heard today comments from the public, we've heard comments, you've heard comments from me. I am concerned about the budget and reviewing things very cautiously. You also heard from me today that, when Bookmobile ends, we have staff that provide that service. I need the flexibility to be able to shift them to another position so that they can retain their jobs. These are the skilled, qualified, talented staff that we have. So it is very complex, and these job titles and changes have to be approved by the board by statute. And this is another one of those opportunities where the board and the staff are supposed to be working together to move forward the organization.
Sure.
I have a comment. I see both sides of this issue. I don't see that we're gonna get resolved, especially since we're already over time for this section. So we can postpone this.
Sure.
Still speaking. Says. Anyway, I think it could be postponed to the next meeting, trust class.
I move that we take a vote on this. I move that we approve the positions as presented by the library director.
Okay, well, I still feel like I need more time to think about what's been said. So if there's no further debate, I guess we can go ahead and.
Do we,
A motion.
it was a motion. It needs to be repeated,
Oh,
right?
you're right, you're right. Okay.
And then we need to have discussion, right?
No, just a vote.
No,
if
we
there-
need to have discussion.
There needs to be time for discussion. Our time is over. Okay, so what was your motion?
The motion is that I move that we approve the job descriptions as presented by the library director.
It has been moved that we approve job descriptions as presented by the library director. All those in favor, say aye.
Are we not gonna have discussion?
Yes, in further discussion. Is it?
No, I'm good then. I just would like to say that this is an unusual occurrence, but I would love to give the library staff the flexibility to move forward.
So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so the ayes have it, and we approve the job description as presented. So the next thing is a resolution to transfer assigned funds for fiscal year 2023 to 2024 capital projects. Did you like this?
I think it's fairly self-evident. The board has already approved these items. And this is formalizing the transfer of funds. So I know we've had previous boards and new boards, and so I just want to help make sure everybody understands that this would authorize the staff to move funds for the capital projects. And then we'll, if approved, have the chair and the clerk.
Who's first?
Don't know.
Just like,
This will be moving funds from the CARF fund to the regular fund so we can operate, okay, to operation. I just wanted to be clear about that.
So going back to this sheet that was as of July 23rd, 2023, money in car funds, 455,840. The new board wasn't involved in this at all, I guess. So this was something decided before us, but is this money, this 101,000, part of this 455,000 was listed here as CARF?
It would come out of that account. The card.
Was it already
I don't
approved?
have that document in front of me. That's why I can't speak to what exactly.
Well, there's, in July, there was 455,840 in CARF. But I don't have a breakdown of what all those items in CARF was. I'm just asking, was this 101,000 included in that 455? Because it had been decided before I was on the board.
without objection, business director? Or business manager, sorry.
CART funds were set aside for future possible capital projects. And during the budget process, we brought forward these 3 capital projects to come out of CART funds. So as funds were set aside. It wasn't for any specific project at the time that the funds were set aside. It was for future needs. And now we have those needs that were approved in the budget process. And so we are just, since it was already approved, we are just, again, formalizing the request to move the funds from CAR to operations to make the payments.
So we did approve them in July.
It's not the back and forth, just like.
So this, we talked about, yeah, I was gonna say, we've talked about this. We talked about this in the last budget cycle that we did.
Okay, and legal counsel is passes muster, good to go.
One,
Oh, yeah, okay, trustee Boss.
I guess we talked about this last summer is what I'm being told. I don't remember the specific of this, but I don't know whether there's other things more important that have come up since. I know we had the roofing that was already set aside for Hayden, but I guess we're not ready to spend money on that. But I just remember hearing about this kind of today in the presentation. I didn't realize we talked about it.
Roger?
And I apologize, I also did not hear a lot of the details about it, so I'm gonna believe that it was somewhat in before you guys came as well.
But these are the things that
I wholeheartedly recommend, yes.
yeah,
We had camera issues, we have HVAC controls, which will also help with efficiency, and then the lighting. There's a substantial rebate that we can, so any funds that are rebated back to us will go back into the capital fund. So a good amount of that is gonna potentially come back as long as we meet their standards.
Okay.
So these are all very strong projects.
Like.
I move that we accept resolution CLN 1221 23-1.
Okay, has been moved to accept resolution CLN 1221 2003-1. Any further discussion? By attorney?
Statute.
Sure.
Trustee Claus?
So again, my only concern is I don't want to find out next regular meeting, oh, there's something that happened that's even more important than this. I don't have visibility of what's going on at Harrison with that project, and I don't know the urgency of it. And we're about to be hit with a fine if we don't hurry up and redo the whole ramp. I don't know the priority of this is my only concern, priority compared to other things.
Business manager without objection.
If you would look at your balance sheet for November, under other assets, the CARP account is now at $597,961.60. And the CARP that's in a CD that will renew in January is at $234,701.06. So there's quite a bit more CARP now. So I would encourage the board to approve these, knowing that we do have the money in CARP still for the Hayden room.
I would be good with it. I just wonder what kind of demands are going to be made on the future. You don't think anything coming up that's going to be a problem if we approve these.
I would like to do a little presentation on Harrison. We're still getting some information. We got an engineering report. I would like to talk more about facility related projects. I think it's definitely a gap in what this board does and is responsible for. So I do not object to any of these. I can say everything that I know on the horizon, that these are all still very much a priority. But I will bring more information. I think that is appropriate.
So would that include the bus repair issue? Or is that all?
The bus repair is in operations and we do have a line item.
Okay.
I mean, we could discuss, if we do, I'm gonna say at some future point surplus and have reserves that come in, where those go. Do those go to operations? So, that can be a decision later. But no, the bus repairs are coming out of budgeted operations. And so capital projects, we do have 2 other facilities that need security cameras upgraded. That would be under 40,000. There are some that are on the internet and are not compliant with modern standards. And so those would be items. We typically try to approach it one at a year at a time or a phased approach. And you did mention Harrison has some items. There's a few other items I'll bring more information for. Okay, legal counsel.
Idaho Code 332724, paragraph 4 provides that the Board of Trustees of a library district may establish a capital assets replacement and repair fund within the library district budget for which district monies may be budgeted and carried over from year to year. Disbursements from the fund may be made as the board may determine to maintain, repair, or replace the capital assets of the district to remodel or repair any existing library building, to furnish and equip any existing library building, and to purchase or replace major appliances and vehicles necessary to maintain and operate the services of the district. Monies from the capital assets replacement and repair fund may not be used for the purchase of land or to build new library facilities or to build additions to current library facilities.
All right, well, then if there is no further discussion, it has been moved to accept the resolution CLN 12.21.2023-1. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, and we have accepted the resolution CLN 12.21.2023-1. All right, so the next thing is discussion of public comment policy and public etiquette and signs. Trustee Robinson, since you put it up, you have minutes.
Thank you. So I'm looking at, I guess, at the old one. Is there, oh, we don't have, I see. I'm so used to getting new mocked up ones in my packet last minute. So existing policy. Okay. I would like if we could add something about signage in the audience. And no, I guess I should have maybe came with like a sentence or two, but I didn't. Like I said, I have literally gotten used to things just being written up and put in front of me. There were no signs, well, there was kind of signs today, but as we all know, there's been an issue with signage, especially people in the front row holding them up and blocking views of other people. So I'd like to be able to add something to the policy.
Right, so maybe we could come back next regular meeting with.
That's right. That would be great. And I will have something. I just already put my little dot in there, but if anybody else does too.
Okay, tried.
I was just going to reiterate that what often happens is the board articulates what they would like to see changed in the policy, and then they ask the director to work on that and bring something back. So I would be fine with that.
Chair, could you ask if we could have consensus on that?
Okay, do we have a consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, we have consensus on that.
Thank you.
Sure, sure.
So
Just like this.
I would like to, while we're at that, ask the director to add something more about, I guess it's the third bullet. The speaker may address library related topics I would like that to say no personal comments about trustees. It should be library related topics. It shouldn't be talking personal about trustees. So it's a third bullet to add a little bit more to that. There's no reason to talk about trustees personally. You can talk about what's going on with library.
Like,
I had two things I wanted to say, but I'm gonna address that issue first. I think that would be a profound violation of the First Amendment. That's one of the reasons it was put into place, is that so the public had an opportunity to criticize the government. And that is just something that as an elected official, we have to take. So I would be quite concerned about putting that in. Secondly, looking at the thing about signs, what I would like to see is something more general in that we would like the audience not to interfere with other people's experience, something like on that order, so that it isn't just about just signage, but whatever we do allows everybody to hear and speak.
okay, I can get the wording to you of what I used today, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
And share real quick, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine.
That might already be there, Katie, on the no personal attacks or disruptions from the audience members will be tolerated. I don't know if that covers what you were saying or not. I'm sorry, what the other trustee said, but also, on the personal attacks, our previous chair and our chair right now, both have stepped in when it has become personal, and stopped it. I mean, I think it's fine if a audience member points out something they don't like that a particular, and use a trustee's name. I think that that's their right. But both the ex-chair and the existing chair have stepped in when it's gotten too personal or too not appropriate.
Yeah, actually, so I think there was a New York case that said that that the public can use even caustic language to criticize people. But then at our ICRIM presentation that I rewatched that we had last year, he said, no, you're not supposed to do that too, although it's not as big of a deal as if they're criticizing employees. So I'm not sure where the balance of that is. I mean, the director can probably come back with something for us.
I'll review other examples and then can maybe highlight some possibilities and send some ideas in after we speak to legal counsel.
Okay, so then we will move on to the next section, which is discussion of future agenda requests. Everybody has any,
I do.
Oh, actually, you know what, it is 6:01, we need a motion to extend that we're going to deal with.
All right, I'll move
Special
to extend for 5 minutes.
Okay, as I move to extend for 5 minutes, and if there is no discussion, then we will put on that. All those in favor, say aye. Extend another 5 minutes. Okay, so trustee Blank.
I would like us, because it was written and because it was suggested by our attorney, I would like us to at least look at the selection, material selection and deselection policy that was presented today. I'm not saying we do anything. I'm just saying I would like it on the agenda so that we can look at it, particularly because our attorney thought it was good.
Signs up on that?
Yes.
Trustee Henry?
Yeah.
Okay, we do not have consensus on that.
Chair,
Trustee Robinson?
so does that mean when we discuss any of the policies, we can't even bring up anything from the other draft, staff draft?
There was a motion. Well, I don't know, I'd have to think.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay, and
It's not, it's not.
I do just want to re-say that our counsel advised us to take a very serious look and discussion about that draft.
It's like,
I would like it noted that the majority of this board is choosing to go against what our council has suggested. And I am simply asking us to take a look at it.
Actually, we didn't have a consensus on going against this. We just failed to have consensus
To go with it.
to go with it. It's maybe splitting hairs, but that's what it is. All right, so the next, Trustees.
I'm not opposed to it later, but I want to get through these things we're working on. Let's get through what we're working on now. But the continuation, you've already got all those open-ended things we haven't finished, right?
Right.
So let's take care of those before we take on something else.
Okay, so moving on to the next section. Oh, yeah, like so.
Really quick, I would like legal counsel to discuss with the board about, if they move forward on an action without legal advice, without approval, what the personal consequences could be. I think that's really critical. So a little bit of trustee education.
Yeah, he said that either one could work.
No, I'm talking about what my comment earlier, I made a very specific comment about reckless and about their personal consequences if the board moves forward with an action that isn't approved by legal counsel. So I would like him to provide more information to trustees.
So we are moving to the next section.
Is that acceptable to put under trustee education for the next meeting?
Trustee education for the next meeting?
Sure.
Yes. Yes. All right.
I have this book, I read that. I don't agree with her.
Set special and regular meeting dates. I think that we need another special meeting.
For what?
2 weeks to.
For what?
Finish up with the policies and the discussions that we had today that didn't get finished with. So that we're not extending this out 500 years. It's not exaggeration.
I just want to make sure we're also having another committee meeting. Is that correct? So we would be talking about the special meeting and a committee meeting and then the next regular meeting.
I'm not interested in a committee meeting until we figure out how we're going to do it. I'm not going to do it the way we did last time. So.
Okay, so does everyone have like day 2 Thursdays from now available?
The 11th or.
Fourth, yeah. Fourth.
The 5th? The 2nd?
The second.
I can do the 3rd or the 5th. I can't do the 4th in the afternoon. I could do it in the morning.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm out of town till the 9th.
I prefer the week of the night better than the first week.
That sounds good to me too.
That's fine, so 9th,
No, I'm.
or you'll be back.
Yeah.
The 11th?
So,
How about the 11th?
I'm good at the 11th afternoon. Okay, so could you?
Let's
see what's available.
time, 2 to 3, 2 to 4.
Yeah, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, maybe even 3 hours. Hopefully we won't use it. But
1:30.
And maybe limit what's
Block out.
on there.
1:30 to 4:30.
And if, yeah, can we not have just half of
topics
stuff
and the
on?
things that we started today, but still didn't, or that we discussed today, but did not get finished with. So basically, unfinished business.
Was it time we worked before?
1:30 to 4:30.
Well, it depends on what's.
That's at 11.
Can we please try to limit this to 2 hours? That's what special meetings are about. And can we try not to put a whole bunch of other things on the agenda?
Special meetings are usually focused,
Yes.
so they're not another business meeting, and there's, again, not usually more than 1 or maybe 2 items.
Yeah, can we do that? It would benefit this board to be able to do that since we try. Today is a really good example of having too much on an agenda for us to complete anything.
Well, a lot of it is because the delaying tactics that have stretched the material collection hard for 7 months.
There are no delaying tactics. People are not concerned, and we got information from our attorney today that they were you know, I would really like it not to be put on. I just would like us to have a 2-hour meeting where we can focus on.
There are evaluation policy, the materials selection policy, and the withdrawal policy.
Can that be it?
And,
No. Sure,
maybe an insurance update discussion.
yes.
We need to extend the meeting. And I'm just gonna say, it is in the statute that special meetings are for a specific purpose, and having 3 different policies and other items. Business meeting is once a month and those items need to be on it, and your special meeting needs to be focused and specific.
Sure.
Right, well, there are, county meetings that they just go until the business is completed.
So we are 4 hours plus. That is mismanagement. That is board dysfunction.
Sure.
Oh, I should cut down on the delaying tactics.
No, we obviously need more meetings because we're not able to get our things done. And saying 2-hour meeting isn't gonna help. I would say 1:30 to 4:30, but we need more meetings
Yeah.
because we have too much.
An afternoon, 3-hour meeting when it can be arranged for the items that.
Because we are over anyway, I'm gonna move that we adjourn.
Okay, do we have a consensus on that first? Yes, okay. All right, it has been moved that we adjourn, it has been moved that we adjourn. Those in favor, say aye. Okay, so we are adjourned.